All right. Welcome to the Lions and Lambs podcast number 2. Today on our podcast, we have a guest for an interview, and this is Tim Sherman. Tim is a Monroe native, graduated from Washita Parish High School. He graduated from ULM with a bachelor's in aviation and a master's in education.
Correct.
Is that right? Correct. Went into the Marine Corps to be ended up being a helicopter and a fixed wing pilot. Right. From there, you went and you did about a year at Continental Express Airlines.
Correct.
Yep.
Right.
And then went into U.S. Customs and worked there for 10 years, which I think we're all interested to hear about. From there, you went to UPS for 20 years.
Correct.
And retired from there. When you retired, you became a health coach.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. Right here in Monroe.
Right here in Monroe. Yep. And then so now you own this store, which is Victory Military Sales.
Correct.
Right. Which is a military surplus store. And then you're also heavily involved with the Chenault Aviation and Military Museum.
Correct.
Yep. Good.
Right.
So that's kind of a rundown. You've been married for 36 years. You got 2 kids. That pretty good kind of overview.
Yeah,
there?
Exactly.
We miss anything?
No, not a thing.
That's it. Okay, good. Good deal. So we'll just kind of dig in here.
All right.
Tell us about growing up in Monroe.
All right. Yeah. Growing up in Monroe in the 60s was a great place for us to grow up, and we lived on the south side of Monroe, and it was just a great place to live, great schools, we thought, and had great parents. It's just a great time. I had a lot of friends in the area, which made everything wonderful. Everybody was the same age. My parents were, at that time, the baby boomers, born in late 50s, and, parents that had gone through depression at an early age, but were World War II veterans. My mother, housewife, but my dad was a veteran of World War II.
Right.
Most everybody was in that area.
Gotcha. So can you tell us just a little bit about, your dad and his, involvement in your life and kind of the way y'all interacted, and then probably do the same with your mom?
Yeah. My parents, I guess at that time, I don't know, I saw it a lot in other parents that same age where, the coming out of the military and being so young in the military, coming through World War II, and in a pretty horrific battle in the Pacific. Parents were pretty stern, but I'm appreciative of that.
Right.
They wanted discipline. They wanted you to work. And that's kind of the way I grew up. And he was always doing something. He was good at almost everything he did, and he was pretty technical too. So I kind of learned to do a lot of different things with him, and he insisted I be there too. Thank goodness, I learned a lot with him.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he had a grocery store on the extreme south end of Monroe, and I grew up there probably up till I was 9, 10 years old. But that's where our summers were.
Yeah. Okay.
We spent our summers at that store, every day on our days off from school.
Gotcha.
But it was fun.
Yeah. What'd you do there at the store?
I just drank Cokes.
Yeah.
I love the commercial stuff. All this. That's why I like collecting some of this commercial stuff.
Yeah.
I love it. We had these Coke boxes we used to sit on, and all this. Now it's memorabilia,
Right.
all the different drink products and stuff like that. But it was a grocery store. It was a really neat store.
Gotcha.
Sold about everything.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, very good. Did your dad have a lot of tasks for you at the store? Did he make you clean? And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, good.
You had these little rubber stamps on the, that you stamp the prices on everything.
Yeah.
I'd do that, sweep the floors.
Wow.
Do all of that.
Yeah. So the rubber stamp, and that's probably before my time, I guess.
Yeah, it was a metal thing where you just set up
The
your
price.
price and you
Okay.
just start stamping,
Yeah.
and I did that until
Okay.
I was blue in the face. Yeah,
Interesting. Yeah, that's
it's
neat.
fun.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about your mom.
Mom was a housewife. Both of them had been married previously.
Okay.
Um, but I was one of uh, 6 kids.
Oh, wow.
I had 4 sisters and a brother.
Okay.
Uh, 3 were uh, from previous marriages, half sisters,
Okay.
and then a brother and an older brother and older sister, and I was the caboose out of all
Okay.
this.
So you were the baby.
But yeah,
Yeah.
but my mom was golden. It was like she waited on him, and that's the way it was back then. She waited on him. He had 3 meals a day, and we had 3 meals a day
Mm-hmm.
waiting on us. And the great cook. She kept up everything, kept the household, and she's just a great mom. Had a green thumb
Yeah.
too.
Gotcha. Good deal.
Wonderful.
So you mentioned that there were a lot of kids in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
What were your all's activities?
We at that age, this was probably before I was, all the way up to 10 years old. We were just getting into stuff. But back then, you were outside, in the summertime. You were up and out
Mm-hmm.
of the house not too much after breakfast, and you didn't come back till after dark.
Right.
That's
Mm-hmm.
when you could do that.
Yep.
And it was we just stayed outside, rode bicycles, drove around, went to other stores, and you know, um, just a lot of bicycle riding,
Yeah. A lot of bicycle riding.
bicycle riding,
Do you have any
bicycle
specific
riding.
sports? Y'all play baseball
We
or?
did. We played baseball. We played. I went through minor league, little league, Dixie league, ball, and pee wee football when football
Mm,
season came.
okay.
So
Is that tackle?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Good.
it was
Good.
fun,
Gotcha.
fun
You
time.
remember what elementary school you went to?
Yeah, it was. Um, well, it was Minnie Ruffin Elementary School.
Okay.
Yeah, up till 5th grade, and then I went to private schools after that.
Gotcha. What private school did you go to?
It was a West Winsboro Road, and then there was one school in West Monroe I went to
Okay.
for a short period of time,
Gotcha.
and then went to Winsboro Road. Then went to junior high at Washita,
Yeah.
and
Right.
then Washita High School.
Yeah. Gotcha. So from your childhood before you get to your teen years, is there any specific maybe life changing event or anything that you remember
Up through high school,
through
or up
through
to
your
high school.
childhood?
Childhood, uh, not not really. Nothing that really stands out.
Gotcha. Okay.
Nothing that really stands out. It was uh, pretty easy time to live, I
Mm-hmm.
thought. Great time to grow up. There wasn't a lot of, you know, you, what I remember, come to think about it, is every day after, I come in, I'd see the news, and it was all on Vietnam.
No.
So you were seeing the death tolls of the day. You
Mm-hmm.
were seeing activity, and be Walter Cronkite on TV reporting everything. And I remember that uh, vividly.
Okay. Gotcha.
Almost every day. Well, every
Yeah.
day.
Okay.
Every day.
Yeah. So that's probably pretty. I don't want to say life altering, but I mean it probably had a influence
Yeah.
on the way you thought and the way you
Yeah.
saw the world.
Sure. Sure.
Um.
I
Go ahead.
I was
Yeah.
just gonna say, I mean, listening to y'all talking through your childhood, it kind of got me thinking about my childhood and versus how I see children growing up today, and and kind of what you described, and I know what you grew up in, and probably like just a very few remnants of that for my own generation, kind of is what looked like the American childhood. I think of being able to go outside all day and not come back until it's
Mm-hmm.
time to eat supper,
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that in a lot of ways for a lot of reasons, that's not the American childhood anymore. And Tim, I know that you are um, a man of history, but also um, you're an analytical thinker. Do you think that some of the changes we're seeing in our society today are because are starting way early in someone's life in their childhood, depending on the types of things they do or don't do? We kind of see this free. I'd say a free American spirit that was instilled within every American simply because they started out as a kid being able to go out and play and
Hmm.
go out and be a critical thinker on their own. And today we really just kind of don't see that anywhere. So do you think that that has any implications or connections to um, kind of some young adults that we see today and their attitudes and their
Yeah. I think up to, man, I mean, it was probably up to my high school years. It was more family oriented than
Mhm,
world oriented.
mhm,
And I think what you're alluding to is the youngsters are seeing more of what the world is offering at a
sure,
young age due to, uh, you know, visual,
right,
uh, uh, things they have, they possess. It's there. It's all uh, the progress, the technology that we have. That
sure,
they start early, and they start early seeing the world is what I think, and they're missing out
yeah,
on the beauty of family, beauty of cohesiveness,
mm,
um, support, even responsibility.
yeah,
I had responsibility at a young
sure,
age. And I think that what I see is that all of that is, I mean, many kids today don't have a parent or only one
sure,
parent. Some
mhm,
of them are without.
yeah,
Um, and I see a lot of that.
yeah,
So the the structure, uh, I think the critical structure of family
yeah,
is gone. The foundation is not
sure,
there.
yeah. Well, I mean, I even kind of saw that shift throughout my own time growing up. Is really,
Hmm.
I'm not going to blame everything on the internet and video games
Right, right,
because that's I think it's easy to use that as a scapegoat.
correct.
But it is, I mean, it is part of the problem. But um, I think before that time, your own entertainment was yourself and the woods or your friends or whatever, and
Hmm.
your imagination. And now, like you said, it's just there's so many visual things out there that show you the world that
Hmm.
kids are just kind of being pumped full of whatever the world has to offer instead of being able to let their imagination run free,
Right, right.
and think for themselves.
Hmm.
Um, and so my next question from that is, with that in mind, and kind of thinking back on your childhood, do you think that, because I'm a new parent myself, and so
Congratulations.
thank you.
Yes.
I'm trying to figure everything out, right,
Yeah.
and kind of figure out the lines that I want to draw for my own kid and how I want them to grow up. Do you think that it's either important or maybe even imperative for parents to have a say in what their kids get to see from
Oh, yeah.
outside?
Oh, most definitely.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
most definitely.
I mean, I would agree, but
Yeah.
um, I just think that someone like yourself who had that privilege to be able to go through your childhood in that manner and also see that change throughout your
Yeah.
life, with younger generations.
Yeah.
um, I think that there's a lot of wisdom and value within your own thoughts and in your mind,
Yeah.
as it comes to uh, what we can do now to
Hmm.
try and fight back against
Yeah. Eh,
this pressure from the world.
right,
Yeah,
right. And we all need to control our lives to the point we can. If we and when we can't, we depend on the Lord to do that.
that's right.
And and what I see, I see a lack of it. I see a lack of control from parents, from schools,
Mm,
from even churches.
yeah,
Um, and it's a child is pretty much has learned what they're going to learn at an early age,
Hmm.
as far as their character.
That's right. Yeah.
And so,
absolutely.
it's imperative that a parent, solidify with before 9 years old
Yeah.
Mm,
that child's decision making.
Right.
You know, they're vulnerable up to a certain point, but at around 9 years old, their brain is mature,
Right.
and so we need to be influencing them at that age and teaching them discipline,
Sure.
teaching them character,
Right.
and to grow.
Absolutely.
So I think it's very important.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I've often said that if I could do a Thanos snap and just get rid of smartphones and computers and I would do it.
Yeah.
Just get rid
The
of it.
world would
Yeah,
probably
I
be a
got
better
you.
place.
Because much like you, even in the 80s, it was the sun came up, we went outside, and oftentimes I know I would get in trouble for coming home too long after dark. Just like, hey, dark, come home.
Right.
But that, and I think the world that I knew as a child was just the town that we lived in, which was Natchitoches, Louisiana.
Mm.
I mean, that was my world.
Right.
I knew
Mhm.
that there were things outside of there, but as far as what I interacted with on a daily basis, it was just my neighborhood, Howard Street in Natchitoches, Louisiana,
Mhm.
or Virginia Street where my grandparents lived. And that was really it.
Yeah.
Whatever was happening in Los Angeles or New
Yeah.
York
Right.
or wherever had no effect on me.
Right,
But
right.
nowadays, if something can happen in China and kids are learning about it.
Yeah.
through
It's
their-
definitely the information age.
Right.
Right.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And we didn't have that, and I'm appreciative.
Yeah.
too,
Right. Yeah. I'm
that I
thankful.
didn't have that. All of that to some people, take everything at heart, and
Yeah.
I think it puts a lot of pressure on people.
Yeah.
To where some people can let it run off their back, but
Mhm.
a lot of people take all this, into consideration, all the information,
Right.
and dive into it, and I don't think it's healthy for society,
No.
at a young age.
Right. Absolutely. I totally agree. And it's hard as a parent to not just hand this to your child and entertain yourself, and
Entertainment.
I try to be, and I probably allow that to happen too often, but I also try to at least once a day with I still got a 9-year-old, at home, and I try to once a day we're going to do something that's not on
Like
TV or
yeah.
cell phone or
Mhm.
and be intentional about just doing something.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
go outside. Or
It takes
let's-
work, doesn't
It does. It really does.
It
Yeah.
does.
Used to you didn't have to be intentional about those things. I think they happen more naturally, but
Yeah.
now
Exactly.
Well,
it's just so easy to.
and I mean we could take this all the way back to what we
Mhm.
were talking about before with your parents and your family model growing up, where your mom stayed at home
Mhm.
and raised you, and that's gone today.
Right.
That's something that me and my wife are exploring now, and I feel like that's just because that's what the Lord has led us to do, and I think that is the proper model for a family. um but that is so counterculture today, right? Where
Mhm.
today it's expected that both parents are going to be going to work, and so then raises the question, who is supposed to raise the kids?
Right. Right.
um
And we talked about how influential the kids are at a young age.
right
Well, you're giving them to somebody.
right
They're learning those person's
Right.
habits and characters,
Right.
not your own.
Mhm. Or just from other kids,
Mm-hmm.
really.
Yeah.
And it's important to get social interaction and whatnot too. But so let's move on to you had a great childhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing really negative
No.
stands out or anything,
No.
except maybe the Vietnam War. And I wanted to ask this question.
Uh-huh.
Your dad served in the military. You saw Vietnam on TV and whatnot, and because I know your story and I know where you eventually go,
Mhm.
do you think your dad's military experience and knowing that he had been in the military and sort of seeing Vietnam on TV, do you think that influenced you to eventually join the military?
Yeah, I think so. I think it did, and everybody else that was his age, uncles and uh, cousins, they were all served too.
Yeah,
Everybody,
right. Everybody did.
everybody did,
Yeah.
and that hit my heart. Really convicted me. But I feel that it's a calling to go in. At least it was for
Mhm.
me.
Yeah, me too.
Some people don't go in for other reasons,
Right.
but as yourself, as you know, it's a calling to go
Mhm.
in, and I felt that at a young age.
Right.
And my dad didn't talk much about his military
Mhm.
service, but I was always wanting to know more, and so I would, instead of asking him, I just get a book, and go through it
Yeah.
or read a little bit about what I thought he went through,
Mm-hmm.
and other areas of World War II, and it fascinated me growing up.
Yeah.
And so I said, yeah, I would like to do that.
Right. Yeah.
I'd like to, and fly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, and we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
But I know as a child myself, and of course we had GI Joe in the '80s, and
Hmm.
we stopped at. Usually we'd go to Florida for vacation or to visit family, and we'd always stop at the USS Alabama, and
Mm-hmm.
my grandfather, for whatever reason, we would often stop at military surpluses, which I
Yeah.
think is really cool. We're sitting in military surplus now, but I was always just
Cool.
really
Full circle.
fascinated with military, and those things were influential to me. And he had served in the National Guard, and I had a great uncle that had served in the Marines, and I always wanted to see his uniform, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but I guess I do have a question, and that is, to the best of your memory, seeing sort of Vietnam unfold on TV,
Mm-hmm.
would you say that was a positive influence, that America's view of the military and what the military was doing? Because I know there's a lot of controversy with
Yeah.
Vietnam,
Yeah.
and of course our veterans were treated pretty terribly when they
Yeah.
came home,
Right.
but in a general sense, it was a positive influence on you.
Yeah, I think it was. You didn't, it was after the war when they came home that you saw the worst
Hmm.
of it. You saw on the news where there were protests and things like that, but you mainly saw um, and heard the results of the war action that was going on,
Hmm.
with a little bit of the
Okay.
other side. But it was more. It was to me. It was more information on our country fighting for a cause.
Yeah.
Um,
So the portrayal from the news
right.
or
It
and
was
or media
positive.
organization
It
was
was
primarily
positive.
positive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I took it as that
Yeah.
anyway.
Right. Gotcha. Good. Interesting. So let's move into your teenage years. So you go to junior high and high school.
Yeah.
Just kind of tell us about that.
Yeah. Junior high was at a Washita Junior High, and you know it was um, it was good years. I I guess I learn differently. I'm more of a kinesthetic learner. I'm
Me
not
too.
someone that can just get in front of a teacher and listen to everything they say and
Hmm.
write down everything and then you know. So I probably had a hard time in school,
Yeah.
learning, and I would have done much better if it would have, if a teacher didn't know to teach. If there's, visual or auditory or
Hmm.
kinesthetic, they just went with what they do on the board and
Right.
just and I wish I would have done better
Mm.
and known that, and I could have been a much better student. But it was enjoyable. It was good. I have to say, and I'll say it 100 times probably during this thing, but I made the best of friends,
Mm.
and friends were the key to my growing up, and I chose friends wisely,
That's
and
good.
and and I everybody needs that growing up.
Hmm.
Um, and I did that, and I had the best friends, and that's what made everything, all the way from uh, elementary school all the way up through high school.
Yeah.
And the older you get, the more you need to discriminate.
Right.
You need to be more critical
Hmm.
as you grow up, and I found that out. Um, but junior high years were years that there were still no drugs, there was no alcohol, there was nothing. It was just, you go to school, you play, learn, go home, play some more, and then high school is a little different story. Um, um, I take that back. I'm gonna go back to when I was in junior high. I guess I was in well, it was before then. It was in little league school. It was I was pretty young, but it was my first time that I heard that drugs were floating around, and there was a guy that was just a neat guy to be around. He was a pitcher on an opposing team, and he was just fun to play ball with. And then one day he's not there,
Mm.
and he had overdosed on whatever was going around. And that was my first introduction. And I said, you know, I don't know what these drugs are, but they took a good friend of mine,
Mm.
evidently from bad decisions. And I said, thank goodness my true friends don't do that. And if my true friends did that, I'd probably, you know,
Right.
do it too.
Mm-hmm.
But I had the friends that did not do that, and so uh, I just saw it in the periphery. You
Gotcha.
know,
Yeah.
some people that did try it. Some people, uh, they just overdosed and were gone.
Mm.
It was very few, but there was, a couple
Yeah.
growing up.
Gotcha.
Junior high, I really I didn't see it. High school, um, high school, I was really involved in like NJROTC, had great friends, and uh, just never saw it. Never saw drugs. You would uh, you'd hear about it, but I never saw it.
Yeah. That's good. I
Thank
imagine when drugs were first coming into the culture, or our society, that it was probably very people didn't know what they were.
Right.
Well, it's like cigarettes. I mean, people
Mm-hmm.
smoked for the longest time without
Mm-hmm.
being aware of any real harm
Mm-hmm.
with them, and so I imagine drugs is probably very similar
Yeah.
to that. And so,
Yeah.
unfortunately, probably for a lot of kids that were introduced to it,
Right.
um,
Yes.
they didn't know what it was, and
Right.
so
Exactly. It was all experimental, I suppose. But I do remember in the late '60s, you'd always hear on the news the celebrities that had fallen to drug use,
yeah.
singers and actors, and it was LSD at that time.
So just kind of on that note, because I know Elvis Presley was a. How old were you when he passed away?
It was in '77, so I was
Yeah.
18.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
That kind of shook the culture, huh?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. Um. So junior high, high school. Did you play any sports there?
No, not in high school. It was all prior.
Okay. But you were involved in JROTC,
Right,
and Washita is I can never remember the branch there.
Navy.
Navy. That's right. Can
Yeah,
you tell us anything about?
yeah. Um, it got me out of school a lot.
Yeah. It's a great
We
reason
go
to
on
do
a
it.
lot of trips. We go on a lot of trips. We had thank goodness we had a naval aviator
Mm.
that fought in World War II and Korea,
Wow.
and he was over ROTC, and he flew all these jets, and I always had questions for him, and he was kind of my mentor. He was kind of the guy I looked up to,
Yeah.
and what an amazing guy. And so we went on all these trips with him, but we'd go to naval air stations. I was on a drill team where you throw the rifles,
Mm-hmm.
and so we would compete. So we'd go around to all these other NJROTC and Army ROTC high schools and compete. We'd go to naval air stations just to go. I was on the USS Lexington out to sea for a week.
Yeah.
it was
Wow.
it was awesome.
That is awesome.
It was great,
Yeah.
great time.
So you were out on a ship
Yeah,
for a week.
correct.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a
Yeah,
neat
it was
experience to
fun.
have as a teenager.
Legit.
Yeah, while they were doing carrier qualifications and stuff.
Okay.
Nice.
It was
Oh,
good.
nice.
It was active.
So it was an aircraft carrier
Yeah,
with
Man.
jets
right.
taking off and landing.
Yeah.
Do you remember what kind of jets there were?
Oh
on
yeah, yeah. It was they were doing carrier qualifications for new aviators that were in the T2 Buckeye and the TA4 Skyhawk. It means they were in intermediate or advanced flight school,
there? Okay.
and so those were primarily the planes that were landing on the USS Lexington. It was a training ship at that time.
Okay.
It had gone through World War II,
Right.
and now it was based in Pensacola for years, but now it's in Corpus Christi.
Okay.
I think it's a hotel now.
Oh, oh, really? Okay.
I think you can actually stay on
Interesting.
it
Oh,
overnight.
I want to do
Pretty
that.
good.
I want to do that.
Yeah.
So, and then some A7s would come in from a RAG squadron, a replacement air group.
Hmm.
Kind of like when you get out of flight school, you go right into your jet. Well, then you got to fly that jet and get your qualifications on the boat.
Okay.
And so they came in too, and it was just a blast.
So you had even more influence
Yeah.
to go into the military
Oh, yeah.
and become a pilot,
we-
which we'll get into.
I actually, they let me launch an airplane.
Oh,
like
Oh, nice.
you know,
yeah. The whole
send him
Top
down,
Gun,
yeah,
the whole
send
Top
him
Gun thing.
down, send him down the rail, and right on the grease board, that you know here's where the ship is. It's heading this direction, and
Okay.
I guess the commanding officer is looking at it on video or on a TV screen in
Mhm.
his compartment, wherever on board ship. But it was called the CIC, Combat Information Center.
Okay.
We worked in there. We did all kinds. We were all over the ship,
Yeah.
doing things,
Right.
actually doing things.
That's
It
really
was
neat.
great.
That's really
Good
cool
I
education.
think every dude that sees that intro to Top Gun wants to
Oh,
do that at
yeah.
least
Oh,
once.
yeah.
You know, when they slap hands real,
Yeah.
energetic, and you're like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
I know that it's
Yeah.
funny, but Top Gun was a big influence in me and
Yeah,
my
right.
perspective. And I remember, when they're walking off the flight line with their helmets at Top Gun school.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to be that guy. Of
Well,
course,
that movie
the
came out
closest I ever came was my
yeah.
helmet from my armored personnel carrier.
Cool.
Yeah, no, not as cool.
Yeah. But I was in flight school when that
Yeah.
show came out,
Okay.
so it was perfect timing
Yeah, it's
for
kind
me.
of like a pinnacle in cultural.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was like, hey man, I did it.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Okay, we're gonna get there. We're gonna
Yeah,
get there.
yeah.
I do have one kind of a little bit more critical question, or critical analytical question, about your time in school, and just from my opinion today, like, I think the public education system is completely failing students, and young children. Um, you know, here, I can see it, but definitely in other places that don't have as good policymakers as we do. Did you? And I just kind of have one question from that, and I'm going to kind of basing it off of my experience going up through the same high school, Washita Parish High School, for the year that I was there. But I was in public education all before that. Did you feel like you mattered to the administration and the teachers as you were going through school?
That's a good question. Um, I think most teachers were genuine.
Yeah.
I really do. Uh, uh, they were there to help you learn, but eh, maybe I'm wrong, but I know now that they have rigid curriculum that
Sure.
they go
Right.
through,
Right.
and I don't think it was that rigid back then.
Oh, no, not at all.
You didn't get individual help, which I wish I could have, if I would have probably raised my hand and said, hey,
Sure.
I'm just not getting this.
Sure.
I probably could have gotten it, but I don't think it was as rigid, but you could tell they did have a direction, and it was timely. They had to get through it.
Right.
But I think they were genuine.
Sure.
I really
Yeah.
do.
And
I think they were
I-
really good and heartfelt
yeah, I can
what they were doing.
compare a little bit. Like, I think I had a few genuine teachers. And those are the ones that I can remember, right? I can say their name.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also interesting to me if you ask someone, who went through the education system before kind of it went south. Like, there's very more fond memories, right? Your teachers are somebody's that you usually looked up to more than you just kind of saw as an overseer. But just kind of coming from, I think, where it's changed is like from when I went through, it felt to me more like a production assembly line. Like, just
Mm-hmm.
keep going, just keep going,
Mm-hmm.
just keep going. Don't care who you are, just keep going. Um, and I think that has some very dangerous consequences
Mm-hmm.
that we see in children today. Again, we've kind of been dabbling in it here and there about, critical thinking and children having their own imagination and their own thoughts and their own ability to just think for themselves rather than
Mm-hmm.
being told what to do. I just wanted to pick your brain about
Yeah.
what you saw through your public
Right.
education, kind of versus where I was at, years down the line,
Yeah.
and now today, right? It's
Yeah.
gone even
I
more
think
downhill.
teachers then actually were able to use their talents
Right.
and teach to where what I understand, we homeschooled our kids, so I can't really talk about public
Sure.
schools, but I have a sister that is a public school teacher and she's been for years. And unfortunately, she's creative and does put her creativity into her work,
Mhm.
but she does talk about how rigid it is.
Yeah.
And it's just, if it's so rigid and they're teaching you what to teach, then how sincere and
Sure.
how can how can you effectively teach
Sure.
something that might not fit your way of teaching,
Mhm.
and it's something that you're having to teach. It's not
Right.
something that you were wanting to
Right.
teach.
Well, I mean, I think back to some of my teachers' attitudes, and it's almost like they knew that the system they're teaching in is failing, and they didn't really like. They were just glad to get a paycheck out of it, I
Mm,
guess, and not all of them, right?
right.
But I think a majority of them, it's like, hey, we know this isn't doing anything for you, but it's my job.
Mm,
Well, when the when the
mm,
government takes something over,
yeah.
even if a teacher has the best intentions, their hands are kind of tied behind their
Right.
back with
Right.
what they can
Right.
and can't do. And I think, and Tim, you spoke to this, but everybody learns differently, and I'm a lot
Right.
like you. I'm more of a kinesthetic and visual learner. If you
Mm-hmm.
just sit down and talk to me, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not, my mind is somewhere else. And
Yeah. Yeah.
for me, as soon as I sit down in the classroom, my first thought is like, when can I get out of here?
Mm-hmm.
And actually go do something.
Right. Right.
Um, and so I think that when we, as Brennan kind of put it, we put kids in an assembly line and just expect them to all learn the same way and do the same thing.
Exactly.
It's kind of devastating for a lot of those kids.
Mm-hmm.
I've always thought, not always, but for a long time now, I've thought that especially putting boys in a classroom and making them sit down for the majority of the day
Mm-hmm.
is just terrible
Yeah.
to do that. Because little boys, I mean, they just have energy,
Yeah.
and even girls probably to a great extent. They need to be outside and do some things physically and
Yeah.
burn off some of that energy. But anyway,
Yep.
well, I think we can move on. Any does anything stand out during your junior high or high school years as life altering? Or
Um.
I do want to bring up one
Yeah.
thing. I don't know if you're going to mention that or
Right.
not, but
You want to bring it up?
sure. So I do know there was a tragedy
Yes.
towards the end of your high school
Right.
time in high school.
Right. Right.
Yeah, you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Yeah. It was after high school. Uh, Graduated high school, and I had my ROTC friends, and primarily four of us together, and we were still, during the summer hanging around each other and just having a ball. Uh, the main thing we did then was we went to movies.
Yeah.
You know, Star Wars came out, and I mean, all the movies were good in '77. Man, it's just great movies. So that was a big thing. But one summer, I got with met a friend of mine that I had grown up with on the south end of Monroe, but he lived in another city, just a little up north of Monroe. I got to meet him, re-meet him, and he invited me and said, "Hey, let's go fishing. I live on the bayou." I was all up for that, of course. So we'd go fishing a lot. And one weekend we went to a location with some of his other friends, and it was a picturesque. I mean, it it was very exciting to see the hugest oak tree with a big old rope hanging from it that was probably 50 foot long, and you you ride it out off the bank, and you go out another 50 foot off the water, and you're dropping another 30 feet into the
Mm.
water. And I thought, man, this is fun. This is good. This is this is this is this is fun like my parents probably used to have, and
Yeah.
it was exciting. And we uh we did that, and I'd been the next weekend, I don't know, but I had to tell my buddies about it, and I said, yeah, I know where a place we need to go. And so us four, we got together and we went in a car, got got in a car, drove out to the bayou, and we started uh, just enjoying ourselves. And uh, four of us, went out, but only three of us came back.
Mm.
Uh, and that was the hardest. You know, I've gone through a lot in my life, but that was the hardest. To see a friend drown and be with him when he's drowning and him drowning you practically. And I just didn't think that after the struggle, I just didn't think I was going to make it. And then I just remember, looking down with my head way under the water, looking down. And I just remember him looking up at me with those big eyes, and his arms opened up like a cross,
Mm.
and he let go. And and that's what, I still see.
Yeah.
I see it all the time. And I'm going, why me? Why didn't I drown too?
Mm.
Um, why him and why not me?
Yeah.
And I did not know if I would have known that he was not able to swim or afraid of the water, I would have never gone. And I thought that, him on a raft, he's going to be safe, perfectly safe.
Mm.
And uh, he was the only one left in the water. He was making his way back to the bank, but I just saw his raft slip out from under him,
Gotcha.
and he went down. And time I got there, he was, he was going down for his last time.
Mm.
So, that has stuck with me, and it's something I have never brought up until 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
I talked to a lady about it that I have befriended. She's an author. We'll talk about her later. And I just felt that I need to tell somebody.
Yeah.
And she was one that was wanting to listen. And it was just something that came up, and told her. And then shortly after, we had talked a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the only 2 times I've ever talked about it. So I encourage people, if they go through something like that, you got to grieve it. You got to go through it.
Right.
And I never did. And I just held it in.
So I want to, for the sake of others,
Yeah.
why do you think you didn't talk about it for so long?
Well, um, one, it was, it was so moving and disturbing. But two, I took a lot of responsibility myself because I was the one who brought it up. I was the one who kind of, you know, coaxed these. They wanted to go after I told them, but I was the one who rounded them up. I was the one who got them out there. I was the one that did not know that my friend couldn't swim. If I would have known all of this, we would have never gone. And it was just um, I don't know, it was just a situation that um, I got myself into, and I wish I could have go back, of course, and kind of instead of just acting, think about it first, and see what could happen, and make the proper decision. But anyway, I just said, let's do this, and they all said great, and we did. And the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life is tell his mom what happened. You know, and I didn't talk to her until, and I hate to say this, but I didn't talk to her until the day of the funeral. Day of the funeral, she sat me down, said what happened, and I didn't even get to tell her everything because I couldn't.
Yeah.
You know, but I told her the highlights, and then after that, I never saw her again.
Mm-hmm.
I could not face her.
Yeah.
You know, um, and it's something I've beat myself up over. And I wish I could have, just do all of that over again.
Yeah. So you feel like because you were the one that gathered everybody and had the idea and
Mm-hmm.
got everybody out there that you just were responsible in some
Yeah.
way.
Oh yeah.
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 Yeah. And I don't think you are. I, I think back to how many times myself or one of my friends could have died and all the stupid things that we did
Mm-hmm.
and you were out there having a wholesome, good time. Me and my friends were doing a lot of unwholesome,
Right.
things and being idiots.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think we cheated death.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I say that maybe to say, I don't think we really cheat death. I think God is sovereign.
Right.
Sure.
over those things. And
Sure.
it's appointed unto man once, right, unto
Mhm.
to die. But, and we can always, one of the things that I hear people say, "What if?" And
Mhm.
I went through a period of my life about 10 years ago where I came to a point where I was like, I'm just not going to what if anymore, because you could
Mhm.
what if all day and forever. You could
Yeah.
just keep what if,
Yeah.
and you would what if things away, or you would what if things into existence. And it's just, I don't think it's healthy,
Correct. Sure.
ultimately, to do that. Um, and then two, I second you in just encouraging people to talk
Mhm.
about experiences,
Yeah.
tragic
Right.
experiences that they've
Right.
had, because if you don't, and that stuff just stays, eventually it's going to spew out
Right.
Yeah.
in some shape, form, or fashion, and
Right.
it may not be the way that you think it would.
Right.
And I think that usually those ways that it ends up spewing out is not good for us
Right.
or the people around us.
Right. Right.
You know?
And I'll get into this later, I hope. But the what ifs keeps us dwelling in the past,
Exactly.
and we don't need to do that.
Right.
And I want to get on this eventually. It'll be a topic later, but I encourage people that have gone through things like that, and especially wartime
Mm-hmm.
veterans,
Yeah.
uh, to they don't like telling a story. They don't like telling their story, but if they don't, they're not going to get out there. Also, they're not going to be beneficial. It's not going to be beneficial to the veteran if he doesn't. So if he holds it in. So I encourage journaling. Get it
Yeah.
down on paper. And what that does, it's just like the spoken word. It's just like you telling someone else what's going on or what has happened, but it's therapeutic. It you're not holding it in anymore. But the other positive is someone later on, if not you or that person, could publish something that will tell people about their experience. And we've got two books here that later on we can talk
Right.
about that have done just that. They've journaled, they had the information, and it was put out for the public. And they were great stories. And everybody has a story. You've got a story. Brennan, you got a story. Everybody's got a story. So I suggest people just journal, get everything out,
Yeah. I
Sure.
or
totally
tell
second that.
someone.
Yeah. I totally second that. And I'm really a better writer than I am a spoken communicator, and
Me
and
too.
so
Same.
I do the same
Me
thing. I
too.
I have 3 or 4 journals at a time, just because I want one in every place that I keep one in my truck.
I don't want to mix them up.
I've got my blue one, which is my primary one. I've got one in my house,
Wow.
and
That's
so
great.
I'm always making sure I've got the opportunity to write things down, because and I'll tell people too. A lot of times my wife will ask me, "Why don't you just call me?" And I'm like, "No, because I can text it better, because I can write it better than I can actually speak it." But
Mm-hmm.
I second that as well. I mean, especially, and for the veterans as well, being a veteran. And um, I think those guys, and we don't want to talk about those things because they're hard to talk about. But the healing that takes place inside of our hearts and minds when we do talk about it
Mm-hmm.
gets us much further along than
Right.
not talking about
Exactly.
it.
Well put.
Can I ask if you were a believer at that time?
Yes. I was saved when I was 10.
Gotcha.
Um, I came to Christ when I was 10 years old. And early on, as soon as I could be comfortable reading
Mm-hmm.
something and and soak it up, I got into Proverbs. As
Mm-hmm.
soon as
Mm,
I don't know, I was 8, 9 years old,
Yeah.
I guess. I just
Explains a
started,
lot.
and it was like it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
It was easy reading. You should do this, you should do this, you should do this, you should
Yeah.
do this, and I took that.
So
You know,
I say that to ask, did that experience have any effect on your spiritual maturity or just your
yeah,
relationship in
and
general with?
I, it wasn't detrimental in any way.
Mm-hmm.
I never questioned God. I
Sure.
never questioned Christ. I never
Right.
questioned anything. I just said that's the way it is. My concern was his salvation.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know.
mm,
So what that tells me now is that when when I have a friend, I want to make sure
Absolutely.
he's saved
Sure.
or she is saved.
Yeah.
Um, and at last week I had somebody come in here. Uh, accepted Christ,
That's awesome.
and I
Wow.
baptized him last Thursday.
Oh,
Awesome.
wow. That's all.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's
So
amazing.
it was great.
Yeah.
And if I can do that, I mean, I always wanted a bracelet that said
Sure.
just one,
Right.
Mm.
but I want to do that.
Sure.
I want to help.
Yeah. I just
in
I
that
asked that
regard.
because I, personally in my own faith journey and my relationship with the Lord, like most of my um, advancements and developments have come from situations that you would normally deem not necessarily tragic, but just not pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just wondering if that kind of was something in your life that um, that ended up steering you in your faith more towards a relationship with the Lord and helping others, and obviously
Yeah,
it
it
did.
did, and it's
Um,
just taken a long time.
Sure.
Uh, a lot of water under the bridge since then. You got your
Right.
professional life and all of that,
Right.
but now I look back and I'm more solidified in that. Uh, wanting to know where people are in their walk, uh, because we don't know what tomorrow's going to hold. We don't. And if you think you do, you're
Absolutely.
wrong.
Sure.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
we don't know.
Yeah. I preached about that a couple weeks ago. So can we move on?
Yes.
You good? Okay. Um, I'm not trying to push this.
No, no.
No, just making sure we're
We're good.
okay. Okay. Graduate high school, Washita Parish High School. What year did you graduate?
77.
77. And where do you go after high school?
After high school, I went to uh, Northeast Louisiana University. It was right after that incident. Um, I did not know I was even going to be able to go to school. My parents never really pushed me to do anything other than just be a laborer. And so I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of prayer time and said, what am I going to do? And so I went to ULM, or it's ULM now, University of Louisiana Monroe, but back then it was Northeast Louisiana. And so I said, well, I need to go over to the admissions office and ask a bunch of questions. And they said, go over to financial aid and see if you can apply for grants. And that's what I did. And I got grants. I got a grant in a matter of a few weeks to go to school. So I realized that, hey, school's possible. So I said, now what am I going to major in? So I went back to school and got a little catalog, opened it up to the first page and it said aviation. I shut the book. So I said, okay, I'm going to school. I'm going to major in aviation and I'm going in to serve in the military.
Yeah. So
And
you figured it out real quick.
I did. I
Yeah.
did. Maybe I put the cart before the horse. Maybe I didn't think about everything thoroughly.
Yeah.
But it has worked out well for me.
Yeah.
And it it hadn't been easy, but it was a good life.
Yeah. Well, like
It
you
really
said,
was.
we don't know what tomorrow holds.
Correct.
And so even though you don't have maybe a well mapped out plan, you made a decision
Right.
in a moment
Right.
that sort of did map out,
Right.
your your life in a way. And so you brought up financial aid and getting a grant for school. And so I think probably younger people today don't understand that getting school paid for back then was a lot more difficult. I mean, because now, as long
There's
as you've got
tons
a
of
decent GPA,
Yeah.
you can get a loan from the government to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, it was a little bit harder
Yes.
to get money to go to college,
Right.
right? Because most people, probably today, most people do go to college. I don't know what the percentages are or stats, but it's at least half, probably. Half the people that graduate high school go to college.
I would say like your middle class kids, all of them are most likely
You probably
gonna
most
go to
likely go to college,
Yeah.
right? But back then in 77,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
it was probably maybe a quarter
Yeah.
of people that went to
Probably so.
college.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Anyways, it's just interesting that you brought that up. So you go to ULM and you get your bachelor's in aviation.
Correct.
Any experiences during that time? Was that a 4-year?
It was a 4-year curriculum, and I had to fly, and I was going, if I have to get grants in order to just go to school, how am I going to afford to fly an airplane?
So
Pay for the airplane instructor.
just for sake of clarity and helping me understand people that don't know, So you're going to go to school for aviation, but outside of that, you have to go to like flight school.
Correct.
Or
And it is part of the curriculum.
okay, it's
So
part
you're
of the
getting
curriculum.
credit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Is it
yeah.
paid for by the same grant?
No.
So you have to get extra money to
You
go
have to
pay
get
for.
extra money, and thank goodness, I had jobs.
Okay.
My dad insisted that I worked.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I was glad. It put money in my pocket. It allowed me to rent airplanes. As soon as I got my private license, I was able to have people to come with me, but they paid for the airplane.
Okay.
And so I didn't have to rent the airplane. I didn't have to pay that kind of money. But
Okay.
and then I just had to start building time then.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah. So at what point during the 4 years of aviation school did you get your pilot's license?
Second year,
Okay.
78.
Okay.
Um, second semester, I guess it was. Yeah, second
And is
semester.
that according to the curriculum? Like you have to have it by that point in
Yeah,
time?
the way it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You stay in the curriculum, and there's certain credits you have to get at certain times, and it worked out perfect. Where you take the ground school, and then you go into flight school, and get your private, and then you get a commercial instrument ticket and all of that. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah.
What let's see, I had a question on mine.
Yeah.
What kind of aircraft did you fly?
It was Cessna 150. Back then, most people flew those. They still do today. Plus a Piper Tomahawk, which is the same size as the 150. It's 2-seater. And then later on, you're able to get a little 4-seater Cessna or Piper Warrior to fly.
Gotcha. And are those prop planes?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Correct.
So you graduate with your bachelor's degree in aviation.
Mm-hmm.
What happens then?
I graduated, and I wanted to go into the Navy as a pilot. And at that time, I got with the officer recruiter. He brought an airplane down, and I got to fly in a little T-34 Bravo airplane, and then do some physical fitness tests and stuff like that. And then a few weeks later, he says, "Well, we're only taking upon graduation." He said, "We're only taking engineers," and I was not. I said, "Oh no, I'm not going in the Navy." So I said, "Well, I'm gonna go back to school." A friend of mine that graduated with me, his dad was over the aviation department at that time, and he
Okay.
said, "Come back and be a grad student." If it wasn't for him asking me to go back for another degree, I probably would not have. And he said, "You can come back and you can grad assist in aviation. They will pay you to go to school. They will buy your books. You'll get your master's degree in whatever you want to get your master's degree in, but you'll teach aviation courses."
Okay.
So I said, "Man, that sounds great." But it's not engineering, but I'm going to try the Marine Corps. And so,
Can I?
yeah.
Why did you have your mindset on the Navy?
I wanted to fly off carriers,
Okay.
which Marine Corps does. I wanted to fly jets, Marine Corps does, but not as many.
Okay.
So I said, well, if I go Marine Corps, I'm probably going to fly helicopters.
Okay.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. So I went ahead and got with a officer selection officer in New Orleans, and he came up and gave me a physical fitness exam, and we got acquainted, and he said, "As soon as you graduate, I want to see your certificate." And graduated and started OCS right after I got my master's.
Okay. So you get your bachelor's aviation. You went go and get your master's in education.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're teaching in the aviation school during that
Correct.
period of time.
Beginning aviation.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. How much flying were you doing? Were you doing any flying during that
I
time?
was, but it was not for hire per se. I pretty much just give rides and
Okay.
have a good time and let people pay for my flying.
Gotcha.
Basically, take a bunch of people, go look at some hunting property, duck property,
Okay.
fly around some industrial parks,
Yeah.
and things like that.
Okay.
And get paid a little bit for that. Make
Yeah.
photography, aerial photography, and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Okay.
So,
Cool. Very neat.
I have a weird question.
oh, it's not weird.
I've always wondered this. So you said that the if you whenever you were still trying to decide if you were to have to go to the Marines, you probably would be in a helicopter. So if you get your pilot's license, that's for an airplane and a helicopter?
Mm-mm,
Okay, so it's different. So you'd have to go back to a different school for that.
Yes.
Okay, I was just
and when you go into the service, they don't really want you to have any flying experience.
gotcha because they want to teach you
They
their
want
own.
to teach you their
Yeah,
own.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
I was just wondering
their own
because
way.
I didn't know because I figured it's two different things. Surely it's
Yeah,
two
yeah,
different schoolings,
yeah. It is.
Um,
And in the Navy, you're taught. The Marines were taught by the Navy
Yeah.
instructors in Navy airplanes, Naval Flight School, and you do start out in propeller-driven airplane or turbine airplanes
Gotcha.
first, before you fly helicopters.
Gotcha.
So we had that fixed wing training first,
Gotcha.
and then went to helicopter training.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
just
So we
always wondered.
kind of get
Mhm.
into that as we move forward here. I do want to say I'll interject this at some point, so I'm gonna do it now before I forget. But in the Army, I met quite a few helicopter pilots,
Mhm.
and of course, I think through TV and like movies like Top Gun, we see jet or fighter pilots, or airplane pilots, and we think, man, those guys are super cool. But I'll just tell you from someone who spent a little bit of time with helicopter pilots are way cooler. there's something
I'm
that
glad you think so.
there's something that well, here's the thing, and I don't know exactly how to express it because I don't want to sound like I'm stereotyping anybody or whatever,
Mhm.
but I think fighter pilots kind of have this, they're younger and the nice hair and the whatever. And it's interesting that you still have your mustache. Did you always have that mustache?
Yeah.
Yeah, because every helicopter pilot I knew had a mustache.
Hmm.
So they were cooler, but in a different way. And
Yeah.
and it was almost like helicopter pilots were just kind of like tougher, cool, instead of like pretty boy cool.
Mhm.
Anyways, but I kind of noticed that back whenever I was in the
Yeah,
military.
yeah.
Every time we get around helicopter pilots, and they're always helicopter pilots are almost always really interesting people.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is,
I
but
don't know, but I know that in the Navy and the Marine Corps, well, more in the Navy, it was like they had the attitude that the Navy needed them more than they
Yeah.
needed the Navy,
yeah,
and it was that attitude that they had.
right.
When you're in the Marine Corps, you're supporting ground troops mainly.
Right.
They love you,
Yeah.
and you love them,
Yeah.
and that was the big difference.
Right. I think that is the
Big
big difference. I do think that is the big difference.
Yeah.
Because helicopter pilots are almost always interacting with the guys on the ground.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a
Yeah,
different relationship.
exactly.
Well, I mean, you got to go down at some point too to
Yeah,
get them.
yeah,
yeah.
In a lot of circumstances.
Which I know,
So you probably
in
have this.
ground combat. I mean, we were always super thankful for all the guys especially, and you brought this up, I think we were talking last week, but like the A-10s.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that was always one of the whistle that you hear from an A-10 when it's coming up from overhead and you look up, you can't even see it yet, but it's whistling up there. And it was super fearful because one, you're like, man, I hope they're coming down on the right people.
Yeah, exactly.
And not us. But when they would, and you would realize they got the bad guys and not the good guys, you were like, oh man, you're just super
Yeah.
thankful that they knew there was some bad guys out there and they
Right.
took care of them before we
good at their job.
had to
Exactly.
engage them, But anyways, different stories for a different time. So you graduate master's education, you join the Marine Corps. Tell us about joining the Marine Corps.
It was Quantico, Virginia was OCS. You go straight there, and it was 13 weeks. I don't know what it is now. I think they've lowered their standards a little bit in some areas. I think it's 10 weeks now. It was 13 weeks where 10 of it was total immersion. You couldn't leave the base.
Mm-hmm. Similar to boot camp for
Yeah,
an
exactly.
enlisted guy.
Yeah. And you did that for 10 weeks. After the 10th week, you tend to relax a little bit, thinking that as long as I can stay healthy and not break a leg or an ankle, I'll be okay.
Make it out of here.
Yeah, I can make it out. So up till that 10th week, man, you were on pins and needles. You didn't have time to think, as you know,
right,
from OCS.
Mm-hmm.
They were on you from the time before you got up in the morning till after you went to bed.
Right.
So and you didn't have a lot of sleep. But looking back on it, that's probably the best time I ever had.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still going out with friends that I went to OCS with. We'll meet once a year
Hmm.
somewhere, and the best of the friends that I had there, we still go out.
Came out of
Yeah,
So
so
it's interesting. So what you're saying there is that you made some lifelong friends
correct.
and OCS guys that you still
Yeah,
communicate with,
yeah,
and get together with every now and then.
right.
Yeah.
And after OCS, after that 13 weeks, you might have a couple of weeks off, but then you have to go back to the same classrooms,
Hmm.
back to the same school. But you're commissioned as a second lieutenant, but you're you're back into the same environment for 6 months.
Yeah.
And so it's called the basic school.
Okay. Gotcha.
And
So you go OCS,
mm-hmm,
and now you're a commissioned officer
correct.
in the United States Marine Corps. Um, Anything stand out from OCS?
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it was, they broke you down. And, we were talking a little bit about, children growing up. And, you know, in the military, everybody had to be broken down, as you
Hmm.
know. You got to be broken down so they can start somewhere.
Right.
Then they can work with you.
Hmm.
Uh, but as a child, you know, you don't get broken down. You just start, at a certain
Right.
point, and you're in your indoctrination. But what was your foundation like?
Right.
As growing up as a child. So before you have that kind of influence, you need to have a good foundation. Well, the OCS gives you that foundation. They broke you down. You were an individual. You were not an individual. You were one of a group.
Right.
And everybody was the same. And you went through, and a lot of hard work. Um, very strenuous,
Hmm.
as you can imagine. But it was a great time. You were busy every minute of the day.
Every minute of the day.
Every minute of the day. Um, and nothing really stands out other than I sprained an ankle, and then I was wondering if I was even going to make it through.
Mm.
And then it snowed for a couple of days,
Oh,
and we weren't able to really get out.
you got some rest.
And I got a little bit of rest,
Yeah.
even though we stayed busy. They never knew it. As
Right.
far as
Gotcha.
I know, they didn't know it.
Gotcha.
And so on that next day that we got out, I was able to do what I could do,
Yeah.
and compete against all those other guys, and
Gotcha.
do all the running and all that stuff. So thank goodness something like that
Yeah.
happened to me.
Was there any washout or anything in
Oh,
OCS? Yeah.
a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, from day one.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah, early on primarily.
Okay. Do you have any recollection of how many guys didn't make it?
I don't
No.
really
Yeah.
recall.
But guys just kind of disappeared along
Yeah,
the way.
they sure did.
Yeah.
Sure
Gotcha.
did.
So you finish OCS and you go to, what'd you call it?
The basic school.
Basic school.
And that was where, if you did not have an aviation contract, which I did,
Okay.
that is where 6 months of school teaches a Marine officer all about every occupation he can possess,
Okay.
that a Marine Corps officer can possess, so that we experience all of that. You're from a rifleman all the way up to tanks,
Okay.
or artillery or whatever. So you learned all those MOSs.
Hmm.
And so though everyone else that did not have an aviation guarantee, they were able to select where they wanted to go. And they put 3 selections in, and usually if they could get their number 1 selection if it was open. If it wasn't open, they'd get their number 2 or number 3.
Yeah.
So that's what the basic school is all about.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
So
learning how to be an officer.
right. Yeah. I kind of want to help our listeners understand something that I didn't understand until I was in the military, but the sort of the difference between enlisted and officer. Enlisted is more like your tradesman, right? That just learn a trade or a skill, a job more than less. Whereas officers are more upper management,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Correct.
so your officers can, in most cases, like you're saying, unless you have a contract for a certain field, this is for you aviation, you can kind of branch off into different areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I know,
Correct.
like a lot of our officers that we had, because we were combat engineers, multiple of our officers had some sort of engineering degree, but not all of them had engineering degrees. They might have been, they might have had a degree in who knows what education or something else,
Mhm.
but they ended up working in the Corps of Engineers as an officer. They're just upper level management, right?
Right.
But for you with the aviation, what'd you call it? Guarantee. You're kind of both, right?
Mhm.
You're an officer, and so you're going to be upper level management, so to speak, but you're going to have a specific job to do,
Correct.
right? Which is going to
Yeah.
be
And
going
when
to
you
be
get out of
fine.
the base school, it's just more school.
Yeah,
You
right.
know?
Yeah. So
You
I
go back to
kind of
school.
wanted to speak to that too,
Yeah.
because I think maybe our listeners have some understanding. Special operators, whether Navy SEALs, Green Berets, those
Mhm.
guys that work there, they have what's called a pipeline that they go through,
Exactly.
right, in order to get to work on a team. SEAL Team 6 or 10th Group Special Forces, but it's usually about a 2-year pipeline, right? So from the time they'll go through like basic training, and then they'll go through maybe their MOS, unless they're also have like a guarantee, a contract to go special operations. Then they go into this pipeline that they call it, where you're going to train for 2 years to become a special operator. So it's similar to what you're going to do.
Mhm.
You're going to go to OCS, and
Mhm.
then you're going to go to basic school. And then from there, you're just going to get the right to go to more school,
Exactly.
right? Which for you is going to be
If
more aviation
Right.
school, right? So tell us about that.
You're a flight school. And I showed up for Pensacola, ready to go to school, and they say, well, uh, we have too many people in. So you can be here for 6 months, and you can just answer roll and go back to the beach and play, or, you know, uh, or we maybe can get you some monies to go other places. And I checked, and even though I loved going in and saying, here, I'm here, and then going back to my beach house, I enjoyed that. But I, uh, I asked to see if I could get some monies to go temporary duty.
Mm.
And so I chose Navy Dallas because I knew they had F-4 Phantoms, they had CH-53 helicopters, and um, it was close, 5 hours from Monroe. Monroe was halfway in between Pensacola, and kind of in Dallas.
Mhm.
So I thought, man, that'd be a great thing to do.
Mhm.
It's the best thing I ever did.
Yeah.
So they got monies for us to do that, for
Okay.
quite a few of us that
Wow.
wanted to do it. So I went to Dallas to see what I could do there. I thought maybe I'd be a supply officer or something like that.
Mm.
And they go, we want you in the back of the Phantom, and we want you to fly the 53. And so I said, okay, I'm not in flight school yet. He said, it's okay. We're going to send you to school.
Nice.
So they sent me to school to be a radar intercept officer in the F-4 Phantom. And it was just a great squadron at the time, a bunch of misfits, I guess.
Yeah.
It was the guys that I think got in trouble elsewhere,
Okay.
and they ended up in Dallas. But it was a riot. It was a riot.
Yeah.
Just a great bunch of guys to be with.
A lot of interesting
A
characters.
lot of interesting guys, very interesting and experienced.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had, I'm trying to remember correctly, an instructor
Mm-hmm.
who was an interesting fella.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
had some
Yeah.
experience. Can you
Yeah.
remind me?
I remember when I was like in junior high, I guess, I was listening to my radio, and it said, yeah, a Marine Corps F-4 Phantom shoots down the drone, and or instead of shooting at the drone, he shoots the towing airplane
Hmm.
and shoots it down, and the guy ejects out of his jet and lands in the ocean, and almost died of hypothermia, but he lived.
So to clarify the story
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
he was in school.
Yeah.
He was in training. Is that right?
No,
No.
no. I was in yeah, he was actually doing his job. He was actually training.
Right. He was training.
He was training.
He was flying and training.
Correct.
And
Yes.
one of his instructors was towing a target
Correct.
for him to
That's
shoot
right.
down.
That's right.
And he shot down
He shot down the
the instructor that was
the
towing.
instructing airplane.
Yeah.
Anyway, he shoots him down, and I learned when I got to training at Dallas and going through this school that my instructor was this guy that
Yeah.
shot this dude down. And I'm going, oh God. uh, and the first guy, one of the first guys I flew with was a guy that was a Blue Angel, and he flew under a wire, took the tail off,
Oh,
and he's there in Dallas.
wow.
And so I fly with him. Um, and it's just a bunch of characters. One guy looks like Chevy Chase. The guy looks like a walrus, and that's what we called him. uh, uh, Another guy looked like, another actor, and they were all cards, man.
Yeah.
Eh, they were all pretty genuine and
Yeah.
unique.
Yeah. It sounds like
It
they
was
either
fun.
there was some sort of extenuating circumstances that
Yeah.
landed them in Dallas.
Yeah,
Right.
right. Exactly. It seemed that way. One guy looked like, Robert Duvall.
Okay.
He played in The Great Santini.
Yeah.
Well, this one guy looked just like him and acted like him.
Yeah.
And I'm going, man, this is too cool.
That's cool.
It was fun. It was
Good
fun.
deal.
Good time.
What did
Yeah.
you can you explain the job that you said you did in the F4?
Yeah, it was radar intercept officer. It's actually acquiring the enemy airplane by radar.
So you did intelligence work out of the back of an
Yeah,
F4.
yeah. It's
Well, he was
live.
Goose
Yeah, Goose.
Yeah.
from Top
It
Gun.
was
Right.
live.
Yeah.
Live. You're getting live information on your radar. You're
Right.
selecting your target and shooting that target.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
You're assisting the pilot.
Right.
correct.
Yeah.
And your extra pair of eyeballs, and that
Right.
was the biggest thing.
Right.
That was large.
Did you have flight controls?
no
in that back seat?
controls
No.
in the back?
So if the pilot gets incapacitated for some reason,
Yeah,
you're,
you just punch out.
yeah. Okay. Did you ever have to punch out?
Nope. Thank
Thank
goodness.
goodness, huh?
No, thank goodness. Thank goodness.
So how long were you there at flight school?
I was I was in Dallas for 6 months, and then went to flight school. That's a year long.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, so you went to Navy Dallas.
Uh-huh.
What was that specifically called?
It was just temporary duty.
Temporary duty. Okay. Okay. So, but you're learning to
Mhm.
be the
Yeah, only because it was the need.
Okay.
They needed
gotcha.
the back seater there. They gave us other jobs too, so
Okay.
we were part of the group.
Okay.
And they said, you're going to be in the F4, and you're also going to be in the 53. So I got to fly helicopters before I even got in the helicopter.
So okay, so you're in
So it was
the
great.
MH53,
H53,
H53.
CH53.
Yeah. CH53,
Mhm.
which is a Marine Corps
Sea Stallion,
Sea Stallion.
Yeah.
All right, so kind of a troop carrier
correct, and cargo transport.
and cargo transport. Right. So, what did you do on the helicopter?
In Dallas or in
Yeah, Navy
Dallas?
while you were at Navy.
Yeah,
Dallas.
we did some troop transport, and we also did EVM, which is air combat maneuvers with helicopters. So you're mixing it
Okay.
up with other
Oh, wow.
helicopters
Okay.
or fixed wing airplanes,
Gotcha.
but mainly helicopters.
Okay. Those are the CH-53. Are they pretty heavily armed?
They were not heavily armed. They had 50 cals on them.
Okay.
You could put 350 calibers on them.
Okay.
And that didn't really make any sense because you're it was almost like being two fighter pilots going head on, but you can't shoot a target in a helicopter if you're head on with the guy. You have
Okay.
to be to the side because
Gotcha.
that's where or the back, and that's where your 50 cals are.
Okay.
But we did the air combat maneuvers, primarily 1 against 1.
Yeah.
Or 2 against 1.
Were you
whatever
flying a
counts.
helicopter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where'd you learn when?
Right. Well, it's two plays. So I had a guy with me, and I'm flying off the seat of my pants because I've never flown a helicopter.
Yeah, because you didn't have any
before.
training for a helicopter.
Not
at this
yet.
point.
So here I am, just having a good time.
Yeah. That seems really dangerous.
That's probably what he thought.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
Hey, it was Navy Dallas. You do what you want,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. You mess up, you just stay here.
Nowhere to go from here.
Did you pick it up pretty quick?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did. The hovering part was something that he said, well, I think we'll just do that later on, or you did that in flight school. But the flying was just like being in an airplane. Once
Okay.
you're airborne and away from the ground, it's just like flying an airplane pretty
Really?
much.
Okay.
And then once you get to flight school, they put you in a field that's about like a football field, and they say just keep it in the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, hover, but
Yeah.
just keep it in the field,
Right.
and
Okay.
it was a challenge initially.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Okay. So to help me understand, and maybe our listeners here, how many controls do you have in an airplane? Like, how many things are you managing
Yeah,
at the same time?
you have three things you have to manage. It's called the cyclic. That's the stick between your legs
Okay.
that you see when in a aircraft or
Mm-hmm.
a helicopter.
Right.
It's come between your legs. And then there's a collective that's on your left side that is that changes the pitch of the blades.
Okay.
And then you got your throttles
Throttle.
too. So
Yeah. Okay. So now, what
yeah,
about a helicopter?
and your rudders. You
Okay.
got your rudders.
Yeah.
And that's the helicopter.
That's the helicopter.
That's the
Okay. What
helicopter.
about a plane?
Throttle, and stick.
Okay.
That's it.
So you got two in a
And
plane.
rudder, but rudder you don't use very
It's
much.
not as much
Yeah.
as but in a helicopter, the rudder is.
Rudder's significant.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I had a helicopter pilot explain it to me. I think he said it was similar to playing the drums in that you're doing something different with each extremity,
Mm-hmm.
basically, in a helicopter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not easy to do.
No, I couldn't do it. There's no way.
You
I can't play
could.
the drums.
If I can do it, you could do it.
I don't
I
know.
mean, I only have one experience with the yoke of a small fixed wing, and that was enough to make my brain hurt. Like just one little
Yeah.
mistake, and you're going down.
Yeah.
That's a good time, but
So you're flying helicopters before you learned how to fly helicopters.
Right.
Typical helicopter pilot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Navy Dallas, you're there for 6 months,
Correct.
and then you go to actual flight school,
Correct.
which is where?
Pensacola, Florida.
Okay,
Yeah.
so now you're back where you
Started, and it gets complicated, but I go to Pensacola, and then they go, "Oh, you can stay here in Pensacola and train, or we have up some openings in Corpus Christi." And I wanted to go to Corpus
Okay.
Christi.
Gotcha.
So I went there instead.
Okay, I see.
And then you do the T-34 basic training there, and then once you get through, you go back to the T-34, but you're in Pensacola
Okay,
for advanced.
gotcha. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the
For
T-34.
intermediate. It's like a Bonanza, if you're familiar with a Bonanza airplane.
Okay.
It's a Beechcraft. It's just the Navy version, tandem seat. You're sitting in the front, the instructor's sitting in the back.
Okay.
Behind you.
What does Beechcraft mean?
Beechcraft is the manufacturer.
Okay, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I feel real stupid.
No, so I've taken a lot of stuff for granted.
Yeah.
I
You
shouldn't
know
be
a
doing
lot,
that.
and we don't know a lot about aviation. So Corpus Christi, how long are you there?
it was probably probably 8 months or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything significant stand out from flight school?
No, it was a great city. They were really lenient toward the cops were really lenient toward the military there. Thank goodness.
Right.
But it was a great place to train. It really was. One significant thing is that the weather gets bad there in the wintertime.
Really? Okay.
And you can't really fly and do what you need to do if you're in formation flying or aerobatics.
Okay.
So they flew us out to El Centro, California, and then we did our formation and our aerobatics out there.
Gotcha.
And then came back to Corpus, finished up in Corpus, and you go back to Pensacola and do the advanced training in the helicopter.
Okay.
So you got 2 phases in the T-34 and in 1 phase of advanced training in the helicopter.
Okay. Gotcha. So when you show up for helicopter training, you're kind of a step ahead because you've already flown helicopters.
Yeah, I felt pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. But one thing I knew is what I wanted to fly. I wanted to fly the 53.
Yeah.
And fortunately I did.
Gotcha.
They stuck me in it, thank goodness.
Right. So why did you want to fly the 53?
That's what I flew at Dallas.
Yeah.
And I liked it.
Okay.
It was a big helicopter, but it was nimble too.
Okay.
It was like a big sports car.
Gotcha.
And I really liked the mission.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds fun. I think I would like that mission too. Anything significant stand out from flight school?
No, not really. It was very straightforward, very challenging.
Yeah.
I had a commercial rating going there, and I kind of wish I wouldn't have, because I had to unlearn some things
Okay.
that I had learned
Okay. Yeah.
in the civilian world. You learn
Right.
a way, and then you get to where you're going, and into the Navy flight school, and they teach you what you need to know.
It's a different
It's a
way.
different world, different way, um, and the instructors see that, and
Yeah.
they know by your record
Yeah.
what prior education you've had and stuff
Right.
like that. So
Yeah. Yeah. They've got your records.
they know that you've got some flight time, and
Right.
where you might be, having to spend a little more time. And I was doing real well with instrument flying. I was doing real well. Then all of a sudden, when it got to the navigation long range in the T-34, I just kind of had a mental block. I guess I
Hmm.
had so much other stuff on my mind, or studying so much other stuff, and I said, "Hey, I'm not getting this navigation stuff like I should." I said, "What can we do?" And he says, "Hey, we can get some extra time. What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to fly to Monroe."
That's right. Yeah. You told me about that.
So I flew back here to Monroe, and spent a weekend. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. That was from Corpus Christi
That was actually from
or Pensacola.
that was from Corpus Christi,
Okay.
actually.
Gotcha.
So you
Yeah.
say
Sure was.
navigation, was that just the process of, like getting to another location
Right,
over a
in
long
under
distance?
instrument conditions.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
it's you're you're getting out into the world with air traffic controllers,
Sure.
and filing flight plans, getting into the system,
Sure.
uh, and I just got snowballed.
Yeah.
And
There wasn't
said,
any GPS at this time or anything
Mm-mm,
like that.
no,
Yeah.
no,
So you're
not
navigating
you're navigating,
Yeah.
by
with those types of
instruments,
instruments.
but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Interesting.
So you got to
basic
have a
instruments.
heading. What'd y'all call that?
It's you got heading, but you have a navigation aid that you use in order to find little navigation points on the ground.
Okay.
It wasn't INS.
So you're visually identifying.
You're identifying them off an instrument.
Okay. I
So
see.
you're basically flying a line. You got to know where that line is. It's going from one station to another, but you got to find that line and get on it, and then follow it to where you're going. And
Right.
then you have to get off of that line at some point.
Okay.
And it was something I need a little extra time in.
It sounds
And
hard.
thank goodness they let me.
Yeah. This question may seem ignorant from somebody that doesn't understand aviation, but how close do you? I understand land navigation,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that even in land navigation, there's a huge difference between navigating on foot versus navigating in a vehicle
Mm-hmm.
because of the amount of distance that you're covering, time and that it takes to cover that distance and whatnot. Obviously, it's much slower on foot. And to me, land navigation on foot was always much easier. I got a compass and an azimuth, and whereas I would get in a vehicle and I would get lost all of a sudden because I'm moving a lot faster and I'm passing the points that. So I guess I'm trying to gain an understanding of aviation, navigation and aviation, and how close do you have to be to that line, and how close when you get off that line, you're getting off that line at a certain point. How
Mm-hmm.
close do you have to be to that point before you're like,
Lost.
uh-oh, I don't know where I am.
Oh, yeah, that's good question. Um, you're you know where that line is, and you do stay on it,
Okay.
and that's just part of your plan. That's you knowing that's your footprint. That is your yellow brick road.
Okay.
So that is something you're not going to get off of.
Gotcha.
You just don't get off of it.
Okay.
But if you ever did, the controllers will tell you,
Okay.
"Hey, you're off."
So they're tracking
Gotcha.
you too.
Yeah, they're tracking
Okay.
you, and they'll tell you, and it's a very short distance
Okay.
off of that line, and they'll make sure that you're back on it. And thank goodness your instruments are very correct,
Accurate. Yeah.
very accurate,
Okay.
very accurate.
Good.
Thank goodness. But at some point you got to leave the line, and you're up to air traffic control, and make it to your destination.
Okay. And so they're just tracking you by radar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So they're keeping up with a lot of information,
Right.
depending on how many planes there are in the
Correct.
sky.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, they're keeping everybody apart.
Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. Good to know. So you finish flight school,
Mm-hmm.
and now you are dual qualified Is that the right way to say that?
Yeah, sure is.
Airplane and or fixed wing and helicopter,
Correct.
right? So at this point, you're in the Marine Corps for how long? 2 years?
4
4 years.
more years.
Well, no. But to get
6
to this point,
2 years.
2 years,
Yep.
right? And so now you're going to spend another 4 years in the Marine
Correct.
Corps. So what happens during those 4 years?
You get assigned to your squadron. When I came in, it was in '84. It was right after Beirut, and when I left, it was right at Panama and the Gulf War.
Okay.
So the whole time I was in, it was peacetime.
Okay.
During that time. So uh, I went to a 53 squadron on the East Coast at New River, did my basic training in the helicopter, and then you go from that training squadron next door to a fleet squadron, which was HMH 362, and you're there for the duration. In our time, everything was training. We trained all over the United States, and we trained in Puerto Rico, um, Dominican Republic, and all over the United States. But it was all training,
Right. Yeah.
all
So your
preparation.
any of your training in the United States, was any of that like joint task force operations with?
We did not
Yeah.
in the Marine Corps. We didn't, but when I got with Customs, we did.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll get to that
Yeah.
here in a little bit. Any significant uh stories or anything from the 4
You know,
years?
not a lot. We had Hurricane Hugo.
Yeah.
That we did a lot of support efforts.
Okay.
And
Nice.
so after Hugo came through Charleston, we went down to help them with transportation of generators, water buffaloes, and vehicles
Okay.
and people.
Where were you stationed during this 4 years? You said
New River, North Carolina.
North
It
Carolina.
was Camp
Okay.
Lejeune.
I got you. Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
Cambridge. Good deal. Um, Troop maneuvers. You're moving Marines
Correct.
and cargo
Correct.
and stuff, and then you help out with Hurricane Hugo, and so it's just kind of a lot of times people don't understand this, and I'm interested to see your take as a helicopter pilot there in the Marine Corps. It's a job. You're just going to work every day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's a really cool job.
It was cool. It was cool. The first, soon as I got there, well, as soon as I got married shortly afterward.
Okay.
And when I got married in '87, I was sent 2 months away. I was only married 2 months, and I was sent
Yep.
away 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
We flew our helicopters from the East Coast to the West Coast.
Gotcha.
So I was at 29 Palms for a month, and then uh, then Yuma for another month.
Okay.
And that was part of our training.
Those are all training exercises. Yeah. Good deal.
Yeah.
Good deal. No, you didn't almost crash a helicopter or anything?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't, thank goodness.
Yeah. So tell me, I did want to ask this. So I was going to ask you when you got married, but you just answered that question. But where'd you meet your wife, and how did all that happen?
We went to high school together,
Okay.
actually, and I
So she's
didn't
Monroe
know her in
native,
high
too.
school.
She's a Monroe native as well.
She is. She's
Okay.
Monroe native, and I knew who she was by sight, but we met in college.
Okay.
And I asked her out. We went on a date or two, and then I was out of the picture. And I heard from her when I was in OCS. How many years later? Like 2 years later.
Okay.
2.5 years later, she wrote me a letter.
Oh.
And I called up my best friend and I said, ask this girl out for me. I only have a few minutes, but ask this girl out for me to the homecoming football game.
Okay.
And write me back.
At Northeast?
At
Okay.
Northeast, and tell me what she says.
Nice.
And so he did. And I took her out, and we dated for 2 years.
Okay.
After that, and got married
While you were in
New
the
River.
Marine Corps.
Right.
Yeah.
And at New River.
So
And
how
that's
did y'all date while you were in the Marine Corps?
I would fly her to Corpus. She got to visit.
You would get her on a civilian flight
Mm-hmm.
to Corpus Christi?
Yeah.
Okay.
Corpus Christi, or she would drive to Pensacola.
Yeah.
When I was down there. So we got to spend some time, and if I had any time off, I could come to Monroe,
Mhm.
or when I was in Dallas.
Yeah.
I could come back to Monroe.
Okay, so y'all are dating through that whole
So
time.
we were dating through all that
Okay.
time frame.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. I'm always, well, being military, and I met my wife and while I was in the military, and
Yeah.
I would drive 8 hours from Fort Benning to Monroe every other weekend, as often as I could. But,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm always interested just to know how
Yeah.
other military folks met their, because a lot of times with military, guys will meet a woman around the base somewhere,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and I don't know. I think in a lot of cases those don't always work out too
Sure.
well.
Sure.
It seems like there's more success stories when it's the hometown girl,
Yeah. Yep.
that the military guy meets and marries or
Exactly.
whatever. So, interesting. All right, so 6 years in the Marine Corps. Any other significant stories or
No.
anything from the Marine
No,
Corps?
not really.
It was just a good time.
Yeah. Well, the significant thing was the squadron I was in was very rigid.
Yeah.
It wasn't a fun squadron to be
Okay.
in. It was a very political time
Really?
to where advancement was very hard. It was peacetime.
Mm-hmm.
Advancement was real hard. The higher ups seemed to be more political and more self-centered, wanting to move themselves up.
Right.
So it was very, very hard to to it was hard to do your job.
Yeah.
You always had somebody looking over you all the time, and it was like the CO wanted to be on the flight schedule every single day. You were flying with him every day, and he was just wanting to advance himself.
Right.
Basically, um, and it was very rigid and very political. Where other squadrons weren't that way, but ours was.
Yeah.
The whole time I was
It's
in.
interesting.
Yeah.
The whole time I was in.
I would say that my experience in the 3rd Infantry Division was very similar. And even on the lower level, I mean, I was enlisted, but even on the lower level, it was very political. And I ended up turning down being promoted to E5 because I didn't want to be in that group of guys that were E5s.
Gotcha.
I
Yeah.
didn't want to associate with them. I knew the games that they were playing, and I didn't want to play those games. And so
Right.
I turned it down and opted to come to Fort Polk anyways, and never made E5, but that's another story.
But and this was not peacetime, right?
Well,
was it during that time? For
yes
y'all?
and no. So yes and no.
Yeah.
I could have made E5 before wartime.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to add too. I think wartime has a unique way. I think in some ways it can actually get worse, but in a lot of ways it gets better as well. It can kind of sift the wheat from the chaff, if you will. But unfortunately, a lot of guys see opportunities. I would say that maybe the wrong guys see opportunities in wartime to advance their career. I had a commander. I think our experience in Iraq could have been better, but our commander was so concerned with getting himself promoted that he held us back a lot, because I think the primary thing he was worried about, which, it may be something to be thankful for in hindsight, but he didn't want anybody to get hurt or killed. He didn't want any of his guys being in harm's way, basically. And so where we could have had opportunities to move up towards the front lines and engage, he was like, nope, you guys got to stay back here. Now, me and my first sergeant, we snuck around a little bit and got around that. But anyways, yeah, so it's
a lot of similarities.
But a lot of politics, even in the lower enlisted levels of the military. It's unfortunate, I think, for a lot of people.
It seems like to me, because I listen to a lot of podcasts or other things with veterans or even active duty people. It seems like that is almost the number one reason why good men get out, is because it is driven and almost in a sense by men who are greedy and want to just make a name for themselves instead of being an actual part of the mission. I was going to ask you,
part of the military too.
Did that drive you to leave the Marine Corps?
Sure did.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I got out, they said you could stay in and fly the Harrier, or you could go in the Navy and fly what you've been flying. And I didn't want to do that in the Navy, and I didn't want to fly a Harrier at the time. I didn't want to go back to school, and I kind of I didn't know what to look forward to, and I went ahead and got out, thinking that I could get another job somewhere else.
Yeah. Right.
So I did.
Yeah, what you did. You went, you exited the Marine Corps
Right.
and you went and worked for Continental Express Airline.
Right.
Is that right?
When I got out of the Marine Corps, there was a guy that had a table, and he had a bunch of brochures on the table. He says, "This is what you can do. This is what you can expect when you're out of the service. You know, this is commercial flying here. This is an FBO, fixed base operator here. You can work for. You can go to work for an airline, or you can do this." And I looked at a brochure, and it said U.S. Customs, and I took the brochure,
Oh, that's right.
and I
Yeah.
said, "This is what I want to do." And so after I got out, I said, you know, I've got to build some fixed wing time up, because I
Mm.
just have primary helicopter time, and I need twin engine time. And I talked to a friend of mine, and he said, "Come on down. I want you to meet somebody." And so I drove down to Houston, and met a guy. He was having a little get together with some other people, and come to find out, he was the person over hiring for Continental Express Airlines. So I talked to him during the evening, and he goes, "Did you bring a suit?" And I said, "No." He said, "You have an interview tomorrow."
Oh.
And I went, "Okay." All right. And I went out and bought a suit and had the interview, and then got hired on that next day at
Gotcha. Good deal with
in
Continental
Houston.
Express Airlines in Houston.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you're flying passengers.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a
What kind of?
twin
Yeah.
engine Brasilia E120 airplane. It
Okay.
seats, I think it seated 31.
Okay. What kind of
So
flights are you making?
I made trips from Houston to most of the southern states.
Okay.
Um,
Regional
regional.
airports.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
All regional airports. Um,
Flying business people and
oh, just passengers.
yeah,
Just like
whoever,
anybody getting on wanting to go
right,
there from Houston.
for whatever
You know,
reason.
it's a little regional airline.
Yeah.
And did that for 1 year. And uh, if I may dive off,
Sure.
it was not a very, bad job. It was just very low pay.
Mm.
It was very time consuming, uh, where you didn't have a lot of family time.
Yeah.
But I knew it was a time builder for me, and but I still knew my goal. I knew what I wanted to do,
Right.
and I had I it was approaching the end of the year I was there, but I had filled out an application for the U.S. Customs Service and sent it to Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And I was flying to San Angelo, Texas one night on Continental Express, taking some passengers over there. And the guy I was flying with, he goes, "Hey man, did you know they have a U.S. Customs over here?" And I said, "No, I had no idea, but I've applied,
Mm-hmm.
and I hope I can get hired on somewhere doing that." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "One night I was flying some passengers, and when I landed at this little bitty airport in the middle of the night, people pulled me out of my plane and stuck guns in the back of my head, thinking I was a drug runner." I said, "That's what I want to do.
Yeah. I want to be that guy.
I want to be that guy." He goes, "Well, they're right here at San Angelo." I said, "Cool." So I really didn't think much more of it, but I got another trip during the day to go to San Angelo.
Mm.
And the typical thing is to go over there, drop your passengers off, spend about an hour in the restaurant on the airport there,
Mm-hmm.
and then get back on the airplane, go back to Houston. And so we landed. We were going into the restaurant, and I saw two guys with flight suits on, U.S. Customs patches, guns hanging off their shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
and I walked by them, and I hit one of them in the shoulder. I said, "When are you going to hire my ass?" Like that. That's what I said.
Yeah.
Just kind of being
Yeah.
smart,
Uh-huh.
And he goes, "You got to be dual rated." And I went, "I am."
Yeah.
And he kind of perked up, and he goes, "Well, what are you flying?" And I said, "This Brasilia right here." He goes, "Can I go look at it?" He dropped his food, everything. He
Really?
said, "Can I go look at it?" And I said, "Yeah." And so we went and looked at the airplane. He asked a lot of questions, and we went back in. We got something to eat and talked. He goes, "We have direct hire authority here, where you can come straight to San Angelo. You don't have to go through DC." So I went, "Hey, that's great. Just keep me posted. If you're interested, please get back with me."
Mm-hmm.
And about a month later, they called me up and said, "Can you come for a Black Hawk flight here
Okay.
in San Angelo? We'll pay for your ticket to get here and all that stuff." I said, "Sure, I'll be there." So me and my wife went to San Angelo, Texas. I got to fly the Black Hawk for a little bit, and we said, "When do you want to start?"
Nice. So
That's awesome.
let's pause there.
Yeah,
Uh, well, I do want to ask one question. What kind of guns did they have? You said they had guns over their shoulders. What they
yeah.
have?
They had their shoulder rigs with
With a pistol?
with their pistols.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. So like a strap
Yeah,
around
and
there.
you got your cups here and
Yeah.
your extra ammo on
Okay.
your left and your
Yeah.
pistol on this side.
Gotcha. Just because I'm a gun guy, I'm curious to
Yeah.
know what
Yeah.
kind of pistol they were carrying.
Yeah, they were
Probably a Beretta 9mm.
no, they were Smith and Wesson.
Smith and Wesson. Okay.
6906s at
Okay.
that time. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. What year was this?
It was 90.
Okay. Gotcha. I'm just interested. I was
Yeah.
armor in the army,
Yeah,
so
yeah, cool.
kind of interested what people were carrying or what
Yeah,
departments were carrying
Yeah.
what times.
So you had no idea who that guy was, though.
I did not, and we
Yeah.
became best friends.
That's
Both
nice,
of
man.
these guys were my best friends for 10 years,
That's
and we
awesome.
still communicate.
Yeah.
You don't
very
see
cool.
that kind of boldness anymore, like
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, that's kind of what started that hiring process for you
Yeah.
anymore. But
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people are super timid now,
Yeah.
and it's like,
Exactly.
just go through the regular process, and you're
Right.
like,
Yeah.
I'm just
It's so
gonna go
less
bump
personal
into him,
nowadays.
and
so less personal.
yeah,
Well, I'm surprised, and I guess, of course, it was a different time, but I'm surprised that they had, even at that time, direct hire.
Me too.
in
And
the,
it didn't last long
inside
either.
the government. I'm sure it didn't.
It didn't last long. They went,
Somebody
after,
signed a line somewhere and said we can do this,
yeah,
and they got away with it for a little
yeah,
while.
and they did. They did it for a little while, and a little while later, they said we
Nope.
have so many applicants that we
Can't
have
do
to
that.
do it all through DC.
Yeah. Right.
So
Yeah. Interesting. Very
one
interesting.
of those little windows,
Yeah.
slid through.
God thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very cool.
what
Interesting.
led you to bump into him?
Don't know.
That
God.
God.
It's just being me. It's just being a smart aleck, I guess.
Yeah.
It's the Holy Spirit.
This one guy's a great Christian too.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
That's awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. I was going to ask one more question. What? So getting out of the Marine Corps, you knew you wanted to go do customs, but why? What drew you to customs?
I like the mission. I like flying military hardware. That was probably the primary thing.
Okay.
The transition wouldn't be so difficult. But you are civil service, and you're doing a job.
Yeah.
And it's anti-drug work,
Right.
which is what appealed to me.
Yeah. So I'm gonna make this statement, but only because I've heard another pilot make this statement, a commercial airline pilot make this statement, and I wanted to see if it resonates with you in any way. But he just kind of said basically like flying a commercial aircraft passenger is just kind of like a glorified bus driver.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
True statement.
Just not a lot to the job. Just get in, do your thing.
But you're dealing with complaints. You're dealing with
Public
people.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
got you.
what's difficult. It's like a bus driver.
Okay.
You're
Yeah.
dealing with all those little rats in
Yeah.
the back.
Okay. Right. Gotcha.
So
Okay.
that same way.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Interesting. Very interesting. All right. Let's take our break, drain our bladders, get something else to drink if we need to, and we'll come back.
Cool.
Good. Okay.
All right. I've got two books I want to promote, and why I do is that both these books deal with veterans, and time period is World War II. And as we know by maybe some of our friends or relatives that have served, that it's very hard to get the person to talk about what they did. And I think everybody has a story. And fortunately, these two authors had someone that was very dear to them that did journal and that did write their story. And in this case, with this book, it's called Telling His Story, POW number 1000. And it was based on the author's dad that has gone through World War II and had been in the Philippines and captured. He was a prisoner of war and went through the Bataan Death March. And he wrote an excellent book. And his daughter, actually told him before he passed away that she would write a book for him, and she did. And it's a great book. And one reason it's so great is because it tells you a lot about his faith all through the book. and how his faith got him through the situations and the predicaments that he was in. Talks about him losing his Bible 3 times to the Japanese, and it came back all 3 times. Pretty interesting book. It's called Telling His Story, POW 1000 by J.C. Or Janice Pardue, and his name was J.C. Pardue. This is a book that Shirley Wesselhoff has written on her husband. Her late husband passed away a year ago, and the significance with World War II in this book is that when he was 6 years old, World War II broke out. He was of German descent, though. They living in Chicago. Did not speak a word of German. Didn't know any German at all. Didn't live the German lifestyle. But during World War II, as we know, they put Japanese and also Germans into internment camps. Since this was a German family, they sent them to southern Texas to be in an internment camp. And so that's where his long life began. And after 1 year of being in the internment camp, he was shipped and traded back to Germany. And they traded prisoners of war. They traded him for people that could not fight anymore because they were disabled. And he went back to Hamburg, and Hamburg was the most heavily bombarded city in Germany during World War II. And so he had to endure all of that during that time. But to make a long story short, I don't want to give away the whole book, but what he wanted to do when he was old enough and after school, he wanted to enlist in the United States Air Force to be a pilot, and he did. It's amazing. It's amazing. He came out as a lieutenant colonel. He did not make it as a pilot because of his health, but he was an electronic warfare officer, and he flew in the B-52s, the 8th Air Force, the same Air Force that bombed him in Hamburg. Pretty interesting book. You need to buy it.
So off-topic question here as we jump into second half. Oh gosh, it left me. So Top Gun. Yeah, we might have to delete this because it's not coming back to me here.
Mhm.
Oh no, so okay, Top Gun. They're gonna land on the aircraft carrier, and the guys in the tower are telling them that they're too low. Pull up, you're too low or whatever. Is that a real thing?
Yes, it could be. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I didn't know if so. We were kind of talking about technology in the aircraft and drones and whatnot, and who's flying them. And I was curious if the people in the tower would know that a plane would be coming in too low to land on them.
Yes, but they're not talking to the guy.
Okay.
They're just talking amongst themselves. But there is a person out there that is talking to them.
Okay.
And believe it or not, he's out there on the fantail
Signaling.
doing this number, telling the guy visually what he needs to be doing.
So
that's from World War I.
Really?
I mean, that's a long time.
Do you know if they still do that today?
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a backup to the backup.
It's kind of that simple.
Yeah.
Well, like, hey, you're too much this way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Called an LSO, landing signal officer.
Gotcha.
That's
okay.
That's the guy I'd be. I'd be
yeah.
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 My job.
And those are enlisted guys.
No,
those are officers.
They're pilots.
Yeah. Oh, those are pilots.
Yep.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay. So there's a pilot
Qualified
standing
pilots.
out on the aircraft.
On the deck.
Yeah, on the deck.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay.
Yep.
That's cool to know. Good to know. All right, so we're gonna jump back in here to interview with Tim. So you left the Marine Corps, went and worked for a year with Continental Express Airline. Somewhere in that time frame while you were doing that, you run into you wanted to go to customs, but wasn't really an option, or you'd put your application in, but weren't hearing anything. You run into the guys in San Angelo. They say they can do a direct hire, and so now you're going to work for U.S. Customs.
Correct.
Tell us about getting into that.
That was it was a very easy move. Living in San Angelo and having a lot of relatives in Dallas, and San Angelo was kind of like the last oasis as far as cities in Texas. You get past San Angelo,
Going
and
south?
it's actually west.
West.
Yeah.
Oh, so
And when you go
okay.
further west from San Angelo, you're in the
You're
desert.
just out in the middle of nowhere.
So San Angelo was a great town. It was small. It had 2 rivers running through it. Had 2 very nice reservoirs.
Mm.
It's a great place for fishing
Gotcha.
and hunting. It was great
Okay.
place to be. And the old Mitsubishi airplane used to be manufactured there, and U.S. Customs had their hangar. They at some point had
Okay.
disassembled, and U.S. Customs moved in there. So it looks, you would never know it was a U.S. Customs there.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
You know,
Do you know if there's a was that a strategic location for U.S. Customs?
it was it was kind of strange. Most customs outfits flying or near the border. And San Angelo was between I-20 and I-10,
Yeah.
well north
Right.
in
Yeah, that's why I'm
the
asking.
border.
Okay.
And it was very unusual, I thought, but it was perfect.
Okay.
It was perfect.
Yeah.
You know, it's you know, you flew for a little while to get to the border, especially if you were in a helicopter. It took a while,
Mm-hmm.
but when you went home, you weren't in a border town.
Right.
You know, you weren't living in a border town.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. You think that's a
great,
good thing?
great life for 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a better experience to not live in a border town as a customs
Yes.
officer?
Yeah.
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 Okay. So I just want to clarify some things for our listeners, some things that I was curious about when we were talking the other day. So if you work for U.S. Customs, you are a federal agent.
Correct.
And so you're basically on the same playing field with an FBI agent or a CIA officer. Or
Correct.
same
Go to the
same level of
academies.
authority and
Mm-hmm.
probably working somewhere up the chain, working for similar people or the same
Correct.
people. Uh, U.S. Customs job or mission is to do what?
Protect our borders.
Okay.
It's like the oldest federal service, other than I think the Marshal Service
Okay.
might have been older. But anyway, it's one of the oldest federal branches because we had borders that we created and we have to protect.
Right.
And that's what primarily Customs does. And so the drugs crossing our border gives us the right to search and seize any person or aircraft as long as they're associated with the border. We don't have to have probable cause.
Right.
As long as they're associated with the border, we can search and seize. And with our job, it was very simple because you knew they crossed the border.
Right.
They're crossing by air. A lot of times when they're doing that, they're flying illegally by not having lights on at night. You know, they're flying low to the deck. They're doing stuff illegal already.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's evident
Right.
that they're up to something.
They're being sneaky.
But we had controllers out in California that controlled just U.S. Customs,
Okay.
and so they would tell us, yeah, we see somebody coming up to the border and it looks like he's going to penetrate. Why don't y'all go ahead and launch your airplane?
Okay.
So that's kind of what we did. We went to you alluded to it. We went to a federal law enforcement training academy in Glencoe, Georgia. And that was a 2-month school. You learn federal law and you learn customs law.
Okay.
It's a month apiece. When you get out, you go back to San Angelo and get in the airplanes. Um, uh, I started out in the Black Hawk and a Cessna 210, which is a small single engine airplane for
Okay.
surveillance.
2-seater, 4-seater?
Four. Yeah. And
Gotcha.
it was for surveillance.
2 pilots and
Mhm.
2 other.
Yeah. You have a spotter
Yeah.
that
Okay.
will sit in the back with some binoculars.
Gotcha.
Sometimes that was you know,
Right.
or me.
Okay. Yeah.
You got somebody with binoculars or a camera or something like that, depending on the mission or whatever.
Yeah.
Then later on, it was flying the Citation jet, which is a commercial uh, uh, civilian jet that was converted. It's got an F-16 radar in it
Hmm.
and a forward-looking infrared camera built into it also, where you could identify day or night.
Right.
You know, identify them at a long distance and then fly up on them and see who they are day or night.
Yeah. So since you already went ahead and mentioned that, well, let me let me back up a little bit and preface this part of the conversation with, and you informed me or us that there are certain things you can't talk about
Mm-hmm.
because they're higher level of security or whatever. And so
Yeah.
there's certain things you can't talk about. And so if we ask and you say, nope, can't talk about that,
Yeah.
we'll just move on.
Okay.
With that said, obviously I'll try to pry a little bit.
Yeah. And notice, most everything that you can ask has already been publicized.
Right.
But for my reasons and me telling someone when I departed that, yes, I'll not talk about that, well, then I won't.
Right.
So,
yeah.
But I'll let you know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so, also it gets political.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to try to avoid being political. I think you'll probably understand what we think, just by how we talk about it.
Right.
And it's an ongoing issue. It's a big hot topic in the United States right now with
Mm-hmm.
our border. Even I was reading and listening to something this morning, about the Supreme Court making a judgment call on whether or not Texas law enforcement can stop people that appear to be illegal immigrants or not. That's so ongoing political issues, and of course the security of the nation is kind of at stake here with some of these things. And so just a sensitive topic. And so we'll try to be sensitive to that. But want to know as much as we can, about your experience there working for U.S. Customs. So you mentioned sort of some of the technology that you were working with on your Cessna. What was it?
Citation.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had radar,
correct,
obviously, but you also had infrared.
Right.
And so, and I think we discussed this the other day, but kind of the way that works is radar is your furthest reaching technology
correct,
that you're using to identify
perfect,
other aircraft,
mm-hmm,
or to locate them, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're using the infrared. How far does it go? 30 miles? Is that?
The infrared was almost like vision and a little
Okay.
magnification to it.
Gotcha.
But it
Nice.
didn't go out very far.
Okay.
It was kind of like looking through binoculars,
Right. Yeah.
So.
And infrared is infrared, basically like a infrared scope on a
Mm-hmm.
hunting rifle. You're seeing
Mm-hmm.
a heat signature.
Right.
Right.
Correct.
And so when you're looking at infrared at an aircraft, you're seeing the heat signature from the engines.
Correct.
Primarily.
Correct.
Yeah. Are you able to identify exactly what kind of aircraft it is?
Yeah. We got since you can pick it up on radar and then fly to it, you get into a position where they can't see you, and so you're flying a little below and right off his tail, and then you can identify him by his number. I mean, you know the airplane type just by being so close, but we can even visually identify it by number, and then we have that number sent off to California. They run it through their system,
like a law enforcement guy.
Yeah.
Using a license plate on a car.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's just like that, and into a federal data bank. Most of the planes were stolen.
Right.
It wasn't like Joe Blow has his private airplane and he's using it. It's like Joe Blow's airplane was stolen 6
Right.
months ago.
It shouldn't be in the air.
And it shouldn't have come from Mexico or
Right.
Colombia. It should have come from, Denver,
Yeah.
or wherever,
Right.
But it was stolen there. So
Yeah.
I'm
we had a
curious
lot of that.
how it's something that seems like it would be incredibly hard to steal.
Oh,
How
yeah,
did-
yeah.
How does one steal an airplane?
We did. It was happened all the time.
Really?
Yeah, and a plane could we'd get launched on a plane that was stolen in Houston, and in time he's across the border, we can't get to him in time.
Really?
And so it happens.
So is this a like an aviation department of U.S. Customs that you're working in, or is this just U.S. Customs?
U.S. Customs has its own Air Force.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we're the Customs Air Force.
Gotcha. That's what
Yeah.
I was.
And all that's changed, since I got out,
Right.
because of administrations and things that have happened since. But that's
Yeah.
way it was then.
Yeah. And you can speak more to that here in a little bit towards the end of your career, I guess. But at Customs, and I may be crossing the line here. Just let me know. But were you guys So you're in San Angelo. You get a call from California.
Hmm.
There's a plane coming north.
Correct.
Did they ever call you for planes headed south?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure would.
Okay.
Sure would.
Were you?
But that was after they crossed usually,
Yeah.
or they were planes that are suspect that have had a prior history.
Okay.
There are things that we have put on their airplane
Okay.
that when it is airborne, it can let us know that this
See.
is a bad guy.
Okay.
Because we put this instrument on this guy, and we're doing surveillance on him
Yeah.
for casework.
Okay.
So this guy's taking off, and we need to know what he's doing.
Can you talk about what kind of instrumentation that is?
No.
Okay.
No,
I don't think so. But I'd like to know. Did y'all have authority to fly across the border?
No.
No.
No, not you have to get permission
Okay.
for one, but you wouldn't get permission.
Did y'all work in conjunction with Mexican customs?
We would go temporary duty for a month at a time, say. And if we did go to Mexico, it was it was uh, it was prior notice, it was through orders, and everybody knows.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, the Mexican government knows, and we're getting just, detached or sent there, and then we will do what we do for a month at a time.
Okay.
And same with further south.
Yeah. Gotcha. Can you so we kind of talked about the technology, radar and
Mhm.
infrared but can you kind of walk us through the process of you get a call, you get in the air, and then you're moving towards an aircraft? Kind of, can
Correct.
you just walk us through that process?
Yeah. Like I said, the controllers in California would give you a call, and we had uh, pilots on call that day for that particular airplane during that shift, and we're like firemen.
Right.
We could not go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had just a few minutes to be able to get airborne. So the plane was already pre-flighted. The navigation system was already spooled up. So all we have to do is have it towed out, and we just jump in.
Gotcha.
And
so y'all had ground crew that
correct
were helping y'all get airborne.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we get airborne. They give us a heading. They give us an altitude. What they're squawking, if they're squawking something on their little IFF, their little transponder code. Uh, if they filed a flight plan, even they could have filed a flight plan.
Okay.
But most of the time, no.
Right.
They're trying to evade. They're
Right.
trying to keep away from radar. They're trying to yeah, weave in and out of terrain and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So they know. Unfortunately, a lot of the times during different times of the year, it's usually it might be a flock of geese. That's
Oh,
what they see.
yeah.
They just see a blip
Gotcha.
coming across the border, and we got called out on that even at like midnight, 2 in the morning.
Yeah. Okay.
For geese. But anyway,
Would y'all get airborne
we
and
get
find
airborne.
out that it was
We
geese?
get airborne and find out.
Okay.
Even though we can't see them, we go, well,
Yeah.
it must be.
Yeah. Okay.
This,
Gotcha.
because we can't find them.
Okay.
But we locate the airplane. We keep our controllers informed, um, and we identify the airplane by first reaching out with the radar, and then flying up to it, and then getting a visual identification, and then we'll back off and get above it, behind it, and film everything.
Okay.
Um, in an ideal situation, if he would,
Are
go
you
ahead.
filming with like a good old fashioned video camera?
Our FLIR and radar is associated with a VHS is what it was
Okay.
at the time.
Gotcha.
Had a
Yep.
VHS camera, so everything that you see, radar and on the FLIR, was on tape.
So it's recording straight to an actual VHS tape.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Cool. And so we got above it, and then we would follow it. And in a perfect world, that's when we call the Black Hawk.
Okay.
The Black Hawk, we can call it from different places, wherever we're closer to.
Okay.
But San Angelo had our Black Hawk. We had one in Houston, or a few in Houston. We had and some in El Paso. So the whole South is covered. And so we'll launch that, and then that has, the two pilots and 2 or 3 crewmen in the back.
Okay.
to take down whoever
To intercept,
to intercept.
basically.
Yeah, and then we film everything.
Yeah. You were that. How long did you fly the Black Hawk in that?
The whole time.
The whole
I was
time?
there.
Really?
Yeah.
You just kind of
It-
bounce back and forth from
Yeah.
the Cessna
Gotcha.
to the Black Hawk.
Correct. Yeah, and I flew 4 different airplanes.
4 different airplanes.
So what did that look like, intercepting a plane in the Black Hawk?
It was always different.
Yeah.
Um, it was depending on it could be day, it could be night. It was the plane is already landed. Well, I take that back. It could be in the air, but we know when the Black Hawk gets on it, we usually know where its destination is
Gotcha.
because we'll follow. We could follow a plane for 1,000 miles.
Gotcha. So are
And
you?
then we know pretty much where it's going to land.
Okay.
And then we
Right.
get the Black Hawk on it.
So you're not able to. I know, like, and I'm saying this because, like, in movies, right? F-16 comes up to a plane, and the pilots are like talking to them over radio. Are y'all trying to do the same thing? Like, hey, turn around, or who are you?
No, he does not know we're there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he does not know we're there.
So you could get right up beside them, behind them,
We get
and
behind
they
them,
wouldn't know you're there.
get behind them and underneath them, and then we could actually
I guess
see their
at
tail
nighttime, I
numbers.
guess.
And we could go out to the left a little bit and read 3 letters.
And they would
We
never know
move
you're
out to
there.
the right, move 3 letters.
Yeah.
And read 3 letters, and then
Okay.
we'll know their
Gotcha.
end number.
Okay.
There was problems though it took us a while to figure this out, but the guys running the dope always have higher technology, it seemed like. TCAS, that is something that came across to the airlines to keep other airliners and other airplanes visual to the crew in case of a possible collision.
Okay.
So their transponders speak to each other.
Okay.
Well, the druggies had that. We didn't know what it was.
Oh.
Only the airliners had just gotten it.
I see.
And so what it would tell them is that there's somebody approaching us. And if there's somebody approaching you and staying up with you, then it's probably the good guys.
Right.
And we did not know that, but it was evident.
Gotcha.
Evident because of their evasiveness.
They would start
being evasive.
Right.
And so we knew that they were doing something, and we figured out after, research and capturing planes and stuff like that, that they'd have these little instruments on their airplanes that only airliners had.
Gotcha.
At the time, but now they're on all airplanes.
Right. Yeah. Standard now.
Yeah. Standard.
So you said take down, right? What do you mean by take down an aircraft?
We the plane would land, and then without
knowing that,
them knowing we
Right.
were there, and then the citation would be overhead and film everything. The Black Hawk would get behind them and land, and then that's when we disperse everybody out the back,
Gotcha.
and they would rush the airplane,
Gotcha.
and then get the situation in hand, get everybody on the ground,
Right.
hands, see the hands,
Right.
and check their airplanes out.
Right.
Check them for weapons, and then check the airplane.
Right. So y'all have
I think Tim may have a story or two that he can tell
yeah.
here in a few seconds.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so y'all had like a specific team
Correct.
assigned to the Black Hawk that's going to jump out and
Right.
intercept them.
Did those
Right.
teams have like a cool name?
What's that?
Did those teams have like a cool name?
No,
No?
not really.
Okay.
Because after I came on, they trained me to be in the back of the citation on the radar.
Yeah.
And I think I was like the first guy, and then there was another guy. And then they trained us to get in the back of the Black Hawk.
Yeah.
So we did it all.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
We did it all.
Yeah, awesome. Cross training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did y'all
SWAT school, everything.
did the guys in the back of the Black Hawk wear any extra equipment or carry
Different
guns?
equipment.
What'd you have?
More guns,
Mm.
long rifle, or a long gun usually.
Like an M16 or
M16, or not M16, but MP5,
oh yeah,
or an AUG,
Man.
Steyr AUG,
Nice.
or shotgun.
the
Yeah,
AUG is the
Israeli pup.
yeah.
Nice.
Nice. I'm jealous you got
Yeah.
to work with MP5s,
Yeah.
man. That's
Yeah.
Body armor.
Yeah, body armor.
Nice.
What kinda-
And so just to clarify, what years are you working for Customs?
From 90 to 2000.
90 to 2000. Yeah, nice. what does their destinations? Are they mostly flying to regional airports? Or are they landing in
Sometimes they don't even
undisclosed
land.
locations?
Sometimes they don't even land. They throw the dope
Yeah.
out the window, and then we stay with the dope.
Okay.
Um, uh, Sometimes they land.
So they're throwing
Sometimes
the dope out so that it can get picked up by other people. They've
correct.
got a strategic location that they're
Correct.
pushing the dope out, and it's going to be picked up. And I think that's in the movie, which I want to come back to and ask a
Okay.
question about. But were you going to say something else there?
Nope. Go ahead.
Okay. But you had said that you would usually know their destination, where they were going to land. How did y'all know that?
Sometimes they file a flight plan.
Right. So there's
You
that.
know, they cross the border legally,
Right. Okay.
but if we have prior information on that airplane,
Mm-hmm.
because we know who it is, if he's filed, he's got
Okay.
a number.
So you got like a case file.
Got
You're
a case
working the
going on
sky
and whatever.
or the plane.
So sometimes we know where they're at. Sometimes they're flying a straight line, and we just know where the biggest city is, where they
gotta be
probably are
going
going to
there.
land.
Okay. I see.
So it's all just experience and
Yeah.
ideas
Right.
and working. We have enough manpower to keep the ball rolling down the
Gotcha.
course if
Okay.
need be. You know,
Right. Okay. I got you. That
it's
makes
not just
sense.
one entity.
Yeah.
You know, we'll put other customs
Mhm.
locations on it, or even state and locals.
Yeah.
We have radios where we can call state and local and say, "Hey, take care of this guy. This is what he did," and or stay away from him. We just want to watch him.
Okay. Yeah.
But you keep an eye on him too.
Gotcha. That's law enforcement. Good law enforcement work.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So a plane lands. Kind of getting back to Brennan's question. I think a plane lands. What's the coordination? Where's the Black Hawk when the plane is landing? Are they landing afterwards? Are they trying to get on the ground first?
Yeah, they land afterward.
Afterward.
Afterward, yeah.
What's does timing play a role in that? I mean,
It does.
Is it a big
It
deal?
does. When the pilot is when he gets on the ground, he's taxiing off the runway. He's usually involved. He's usually involved talking with tower or ground, and he's trying to stay clear of other airplanes. He's busy,
Yeah.
but everything's normal,
Okay.
for him.
Right.
And so at that time, we're setting up to where when he does park, that's where we want to be already. We want to be on the ground when he's shutting down.
Okay.
Because he's kind of busy.
Yeah.
So once he's shutting down, we're on the ground right behind him, and
Gotcha.
then we rush the airplane.
Okay. So does the Black Hawk have to land somewhere? I mean, I imagine there's other planes in the area, and so
Yeah.
they've got to land somewhere specific. And are they taxiing?
It depends. Yeah, it
Yeah.
depends. Sometimes you can land way behind, and then we could taxi.
Yeah.
On the runway behind him.
Okay.
And sometimes if there's enough room, we can just sit down behind him.
Yeah.
But you don't want to blow airplanes over,
Right.
which you could with
Yeah.
the Black Hawks.
Okay.
So you're like landing at an airport somewhere.
Correct.
And
Usually.
so they may not, even if you land, they may not know that you're there for them.
Correct.
I mean, they probably would have some suspicions if they know they got
That's what I
drugs
was
on
gonna
them.
ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they?
Did you ever see a pilot have like that? Oh crap!
Oh yeah.
That must be
Oh, yeah.
customs.
Oh yeah.
I'd have to
exactly.
imagine that's a terrible feeling.
Yeah.
Just got dope in the back, and then you see a Black Hawk just boom.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Dang it.
So you make the arrest. Does customs take that pilot in custody, or did y'all hand him over to
Usually hand them over.
local
Yeah.
law enforcement?
Mm-hmm.
State?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And those guys probably have their own task forces that
Correct.
handle that kind of stuff.
Correct.
Gotcha.
And we could have a customs agent there too. If it's already an ongoing case, this guy's already aware,
Mm-hmm.
and he's usually there on the ground coordinating everything, and he'll take him, or he'll make sure he has their task force to take him.
Gotcha.
But it's usually controlled.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
sometimes it's not. Sometimes we just, you just call in other law enforcement and have them there standing by, since it's
Okay.
so fluid.
Gotcha.
You don't really know where you're landing, but you're keeping people apprised
Okay.
along the way.
Did I'm just curious. Did y'all have your own jail or anything?
Mm-mm.
Y'all didn't have any need for that.
No.
So you're always handing those guys off
Yeah.
to somebody else. Okay. What about the dope?
That would end up at the at a office, a customs office.
Customs
usually.
office. So that would stay in
We'd
customs.
keep it. Yeah, we'd keep
Yeah.
it federally, because that's going to go as evidence
Yeah.
in
Okay.
federal court.
Gotcha. Can you talk about what y'all would do with it?
Um, you know, we would hand it over to our ground side, and it gets destroyed.
Yeah.
But I couldn't tell you anything more about that. Really.
Gotcha. Yeah. I was curious. I didn't know if it would get recirculated into some.
They could use it for
Yeah.
use it for casework,
Right.
for undercover work.
Right.
They could use
Yeah,
it
that's
that
what
way.
I was kind of getting at there.
Hmm.
Interesting. Okay. Um, trying to think if there's any more technical questions that I have about being a customs. Um, anytime you get in the airplane to go intercept, you got a firearm
Correct.
on you.
Hmm.
Yeah, just in case something.
Yeah. Yeah.
In case you got to sit your plane down and in relation to the bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Interesting. Can you tell us any stories? Just interesting scenarios.
Um. Some people they looked suspicious. They they were innocent.
Yeah.
And so that's where you get the deer in the headlights.
Okay.
Look.
Yeah. That's probably a worse feeling.
um, and that has happened. Um, but most of the time it was either people end up crossing the border. Sometimes it would be by airplane. Sometimes it would be by foot or on horseback or whatever.
I was going to ask,
So-
yeah, did y'all do any intercepting with people just coming across on the ground?
Right.
Yeah.
We did that in the Black Hawk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did y'all work hand in hand with Border Patrol?
Correct.
Yeah.
We would.
Okay.
Or
They
JTF
call
6
you or you call them?
If we had a case going, uh, we would work hand in hand, and we have our briefings together and things like
Yeah.
that, and know when to do what to do at what time.
Okay.
Um, and so there might be an indication of when we all need to come in. They've got a guy on the inside,
Mhm.
and you see him do something, then that tells us that, well, everybody needs to rush in, and that's kind of how we coordinated things.
Gotcha.
But sometimes it was just, you know, people were on the other side. We knew they were there, and they're coming across, and they're going to come across by horse or whatever,
Okay.
and mule it across, and it wasn't really casework, but we built case on it,
Yeah.
and do that. um, did all different things with customs. That's why it was so great. It was so versatile, so
Right.
inclusive and unpredictable.
Yeah.
But a lot of it was casework, but some of it wasn't. Some of
Gotcha.
it was just, hey, somebody's crossing the border right now, and we're already out doing a patrol,
Mhm.
and go get him, and follow him.
Gotcha.
Anybody ever
So-
shoot back?
It's on the ground.
Yeah.
The foreign militaries would shoot.
Really?
Yeah.
So I think you had a story about that. Did you tell me a story about that? the
Oh,
other day?
I don't know which one we talked about, but I mean, you could fly. I was in an A-Star helicopter too, and you just patrol the border or the Black Hawk, and you'd see the Mexican military on the other side, and they'll shoot at you.
Yeah.
Um, and they have interest. They have interest in the dope too.
Yeah.
They know it's crossing.
Right. Well, and I think we're probably all aware that Mexico is pretty corrupt
Oh yeah.
with the government
They all are.
and even ours.
I hate to say it.
Yeah.
but it
No,
all
for
is.
sure.
It's
yeah.
money.
Right. Yeah. Big money.
Mhm.
How does the majority of illegal drugs come across the border?
Back then, it was by airplane.
Okay.
Until NAFTA. When NAFTA came, Clinton opened up the borders and did not hire any more inspectors. They just opened up more ports, and it could just come across by truck. We didn't have enough people to examine everything, and so it could come across basically legally.
Okay. So can you kind of explain from your understanding, working in U.S. Customs, what NAFTA was and sort of how it changed the game? I mean, you just kind of spoke to it a little bit.
Yeah, I think that for me that was a big thing. It was a time where all of our bases, if you remember, were either closed or open to the public.
Right.
It was a time of more border
Mm-hmm.
crossing, but less security.
Right.
And so it caused us to work harder, smarter, but at the end of the day, more was getting across.
Gotcha.
It made our jobs worse.
So it's basically NAFTA was basically like regulations that changed what probably Border Patrol and U.S. Customs was able to do
Correct. That's
in
exactly right.
intercepting bad
Right.
guys and drugs.
Right. It just made our jobs more difficult.
Yeah.
Um,
And there, that plays into what we were just talking about with big money
mhm.
and politics.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So when that administration came on and NAFTA was open, it was time. It was when they took away also our monies. They took away our airplanes. They took away our helicopters. They took away our fuel,
Mm-hmm.
ammunition, and they took away our qualification. They said, well, qualify once a year. And we were
Right.
qualifying all the time.
Yeah. So basically,
Staying-
standards go from here. Money for supplies and
Mhm.
aircraft and everything just drops.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it makes what you do a lot harder.
Exactly. And then you wonder why you're doing what you do.
Right.
And that was in my case.
Yeah.
Know. You were asking about specifics, but we worked in Mexico, but we worked down in Panama.
Mm-hmm.
We worked in Colombia. We worked in Peru, Venezuela, and Honduras, and for the source. And
Gotcha.
It was good flying. It was only the Citation, not the Black Hawk.
Okay.
And so we got their military involved. And so this was earlier. This was before Clinton era. And so it was more serious. A lot of money was given out to the governments to do their job. And their job was to keep the drugs from, of course, coming across our border and destroy them, before it gets,
Right.
on the airplane, basically. Or if it gets on the airplane, we need to get it before the border.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of what we were doing down there, and they called it training.
Yeah.
We're training them
Okay.
to do their job. But basically, it was doing the same thing you're doing in the States, but you're doing it for their government, and you got some of their government people on board.
Yeah. Okay. So reaching further towards the front end of the operation to
Yes.
prevent it
Correct.
there.
Correct.
Interesting. And you're working with those foreign
Air forces.
So they're military, basically.
Yeah.
They don't have customs like we do. That's a separate entity from the military, so they just have to use their military.
Correct.
Basically, yeah.
Correct.
So during your 10 years in customs, just any specific story that is really interesting, out of the ordinary?
Yeah, there's a few, but I'll tell you one. We were in Puerto Vallarta, of all places. A very nice place to be. The Navy had picked up an airplane way out, like near Aruba or whatever, but
Okay.
it was flying all the way across and has now crossed south of Panama, and it was coming up on to the west coast of Mexico, and I was supervising a unit in there in Puerto Vallarta, and they called us out and to intercept the guy because they knew that he didn't have much more fuel, and that he did have extended fuel tanks apparently because he had flown so far so long, and when we launched, we picked him up, and then noticed after just a little while that he started doing something erratic. He started flying. We could tell he was on MDGs because he was flying in the hills.
Night vision goggles.
Night vision goggles.
Right.
He was on MVGs apparently because he was in the mountains.
Okay.
But then he started doing a lot of jinking like this, back and forth. It was like something changed, something happened. And then he dove down to Puerto Vallarta Airport. And Puerto Vallarta Airport, the runway is just a few feet from the water.
Okay.
And then he landed actually just short of the runway, almost in the water, but short of the runway, hit the edge of the runway and skid off to the edge of the runway, and two guys got out and ran.
Took off.
And we never saw them again.
Oh.
But I came back around and landed on a taxiway to come around to the airplane and shut down and got out. And we noticed that when you opened the door, there was a little pathway about this wide where a little person could actually go in and go up toward the cockpit, but everything else was loaded.
Just stacked with.
dope.
Wow.
Except in the very back of the airplane. The very back of the airplane was 1 gallon milk jugs.
Oh, that's.
And these 1 gallon milk jugs had gasoline in them. And the hose, they had a hose that there was a guy, the co-pilot, I guess, would go back to the back and make sure after his fuel tanks were emptied, they would start putting the hose down into these gallon jugs. Well, it was in the last gallon jug and it was empty. So he had run out of gas.
Yeah.
And,
so they're siphoning gas from 1 gallon milk jugs into the fuel tank.
Exactly.
That's to keep the thing in the air.
So
they knew they were going to be in the air for a while.
Yeah.
Did y'all have any idea what ultimately where they were trying to get to? Or?
No, not really. We just knew it was about time they were going to be landing somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's strategically why we were where we were.
Yeah.
And it was perfect because we didn't even have to even take off. I wish I'd been in a little lawn chair on the side of the runway,
just watch.
and watch those two guys leave.
I'd love to hear their story. Like how did
right.
Well, obviously, there's a lot of money in that load that they were bringing.
Oh yeah.
Was that cocaine?
Left it.
And
was that cocaine?
It was marijuana.
Marijuana. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so I looked up at the tail, the tail number, and it was "I am God." That was the that was the wording on it.
So you were dealing with some high level.
Oh yeah, it's always
cartel.
Always down there.
Yeah,
that's all it was.
But whoever this person was thought they were somebody.
Well, it was a cartel.
Yeah, they're kind of making a statement though by saying like "I am God."
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. But there's numerous stories.
I'm sure you have plenty.
Yeah. It'll be another day.
Can you can you speak to what was the biggest bust or anything that y'all made?
Yeah, I don't biggest bust. I'm trying to think.
Or maybe was there any like joint task force operation that y'all did with other agencies?
Yeah. And I do have a stack of literature. It says, this is what you got, this is what you did, this is what you accommodation for this or whatever, and this was the total. And it's mind-boggling. It really is. To what, when you see something small, it usually leads on to something much bigger.
Yeah.
And so we got the results of something much bigger than what we just took down.
Yeah.
We did more good.
Yeah. It was always part of a bigger operation.
Yeah. It's always a bigger operation.
Yeah. Interesting.
So right now I can't think of, it's been so long, but, it was some big airplanes was full of dope, you know, and that's what we took down.
What was the biggest airplane y'all ever intercepted?
We have, seized planes the size of a DC-9.
Yeah.
Okay. Or almost 727 size airplane.
Okay, that's pretty big.
Yeah,
it's getting up pretty big.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you got an award working for U.S. Customs for a hurricane.
Oh yeah, relief? Yeah. It was tornado. Actually, I probably said hurricane.
Okay.
And it was kind of ridiculous. I feel bad about it. I didn't even want to mention it, but I will. And this is typical government. And if you're a civil service worker or federal government, you'll understand. But we had a tornado in Oklahoma, and we were to go up there just to help out the public, however we could help out. We took dignitaries up flying. We took camera crews up. We took newspaper people up and just showed them where it touched down and where it lifted up, and it was miles. I mean, you could see big, huge railroad cars that were had stood up on the end like a top.
Wow.
And taken a half a mile.
Wow.
And spinning, and it was just amazing. And all the devastation, it looked like a hurricane.
Yeah.
And so we did all that. We took all these dignitaries up and then got back got back to the base, and a few months later, you get a letter, and it says, "You and so many other people have been given the award for valor doing what you did in Oklahoma City."
Yeah.
And I just had to laugh, but I felt bad,
Yeah.
you know. We had recently somebody that had passed away because he was trying to save another customs officer.
Mm.
That person should get it,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah.
And here we are just giving people rides,
Yeah.
and we do that all the time. We
Yeah.
give school teachers rides. I mean, it's like, why didn't I get a valor for that?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
it's stupid,
Yeah.
really
Well, you
stupid.
took the right people up in those scenarios.
Oh, I don't know. But the commissioner we had at the time was, he evidently did not know, but thought he did know what we were doing.
Yeah.
We were just helping the public out.
Yeah.
And
Well,
valor was not the medal to give, but he did.
yeah.
And I
Gotcha.
appreciate it, but it
Yeah.
wasn't deserving.
Gotcha. Well, I think you got the right attitude about that. I think, and it's I do think that I don't think you should downplay what you did though, because you probably took some of the right people up who could make things happen on the ground that made a difference,
Mm.
but I will say, I mean, I do agree with you. I know when we came back from Iraq and, we all got certain
Mhm.
awards or whatever for whatever we did, and officers who didn't do anything any differently than the rest of us would get a higher award just because they were an officer, and it's kind of like, why do they get
Yeah,
that?
why is that?
Why don't we all get that?
I don't understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. I never understood that either, but
Goodness,
I guess position matters sometimes for those
Yeah.
kinds of things.
I guess.
Okay. So U.S. Customs for 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years.
Anything else you want to say about?
It was interesting. We worked with Southcom down in Panama back when Panama was Panama and
Mhm.
had the canal.
Yeah.
So it was a big joint effort with the Air Force,
Right.
where it was really cool. We worked with from spy planes, U-2s,
Mm.
who
Oh,
would give
nice.
us our intelligence, and
Wow.
we'd talk to the U-2 guys. We'd
That's cool.
watch them take off, and they'd do all the surveillance and stuff for us. Come back and give us, show us where all they were growing it and harvesting it and preparing it and all of that, processing all the dope. We get all that information, and then we knew pretty much where they were doing stuff.
Yeah.
But it was really neat being around the Air Force Base all the time, being around a lot of fast-moving airplanes, a lot of big cargo airplanes. It was just a big military venture, which was needed, I think,
Gotcha.
at the time.
Okay. Yeah.
It was a great place to be, and that was when Reagan was in
Right.
doing that. So, and all that's public knowledge. Nothing
Yeah.
clandestine about it. So.
Right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to make it as general as possible so that it doesn't seem too opinionated, maybe. But from your experience with, obviously combating cartels, trying to smuggle drugs, do you think that in general the average American, I'll say do you think the average American has any understanding of just how powerful and influential cartels actually are?
No.
Hmm.
No.
That's a good question.
No, I don't. They don't, and it's not just the cartel.
Sure. Sure.
It's very political,
Right.
and you can take that for what it's
Sure.
worth. So you're battling so much,
Right.
and it's not just the cartels; it's
Right.
everybody involved.
Sure. I'll
But
ask.
people don't know that.
Sure.
They might see it on TV and say, "Oh, yeah,"
Right.
but they might not realize that it's actually real and going
Sure.
on.
So I'll ask one more from that uh, sequence. How dangerous do you think the cartels, and we'll generalize it by saying cartels, how dangerous do you think the cartels are to our sovereignty as a nation and our security and safety?
Uh, uh, you know, the I haven't kept up with it in quite a while. but our borders have been intruded upon.
Right.
Where if you're living on the border, you're living in fear.
Sure.
Because they're wanting your property on this
Right.
side of the border.
Right.
And all this
Mm.
is not just an individual. It's
Sure.
it's
Right.
an organization.
Right. And that's kind of what I was trying to get to is, do you think that the organization of cartels could be something? I mean, it already is in a lot of ways, but in a much more um in a much more outward way maybe that we haven't seen yet, just from your experience and the little that you see now. Do you think that they one day could be a more I can't think of the word I'm trying to think of, but uh
Threat.
bigger threat, you know, outwardly than what we even see now?
I don't think they're going to be in the States
Mm.
as much because of what they do.
Sure.
They want monies.
Right.
They're not terrorists
Sure.
per se, because that generates fear.
Sure.
They're income generating,
Right.
and that's what they want. And
Gotcha.
they want to stay on their side where they can do what they want to do legally or illegally, but within their realm.
Sure.
That's the way they operate. That's the way they do things. It will always be on that side.
Gotcha.
Um, I don't think there will be any cartel terrorists.
Gotcha.
The
Yeah.
terrorists are going to come from elsewhere.
Gotcha.
Different reasons.
I'm just kind of thinking out loud, but I would think that they would want the American economy to stay stable because that's where their income comes
Exactly.
from.
That makes sense. I didn't think about it that
Exactly.
way.
So if America destabilizes or our economy continues to crash, they're losing out.
Yeah.
In the
So
long
they
run.
just want to keep sending us drugs under the radar
Correct.
and getting their money from that
Correct.
versus taking us down per se.
Correct.
That makes a lot of sense.
Correct.
So I wanted to ask one. Have you seen the movie with Tom Cruise where he's it's a true story or based on a true story where the guy from Baton Rouge goes and gets involved in these drug
Right.
smuggling.
Right.
You got any? What's your take on the movie? Or
It was right on.
yeah, okay,
Yeah, it was right. And what I know about it, I don't know a lot about it, but I heard the movie was very correct, very close to being,
okay,
the way it actually was. But I remember when I was in high school or junior high, planes would land and crash land near Bastrop,
okay,
and that's where they were going.
yeah,
they
like
were
Mena, Arkansas.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they would be full of
Yeah.
drugs.
Wow.
Um,
So
so
I kind of wanted to bring that up. Well, one, just to have your opinion,
mhm.
but two, that is close to home. I mean, that's guys from Baton Rouge. They're crashing in Bastrop and then landing in Mena. The operation was in Mena, Arkansas.
Yeah.
And yeah. Anyways, it's just very interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, and a fascinating movie. It was a good movie. It was
I haven't seen it.
entertaining,
I'll
and
have to see it. I mean, I heard about it from the
Yeah.
Sean Ryan
I can't remember the name of it, but
show. That was the guy, right? Or was it somebody
It was the guy.
similar?
he got killed.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the cartel ended
Right.
up killing him
Gotcha. Oh, okay.
because he was trying to get out. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
but yeah, crazy. So you decided to leave customs because of the political direction that things were headed.
Yeah. It was. I went on a couple other missions, and I said, man, and I was supervising one of them, and I saw what was going on with their government, and I'm going, why am I here? Flying where I'm at, doing what I'm doing, to no avail, and it's political, out of the country, away from home, dangerous. Hey, let me try to check on doing something else.
Yeah.
So I did. I went ahead and started. I pursued one company and applied with them.
Yeah. So you what's it like getting out of customs? Is it similar to being terminating out of the military?
It was easier. Yeah.
Easier?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it was just a separation brief, and you talk to your supervisor, telling him, he's got questions for you, tells you what you should not say, and have a good life basically, and you're gone.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you ended up with 16 years of
Federal service.
government service.
Yeah, government service.
Yeah. Right. So, 4 years too short to get anything
Yeah.
out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't get anything out of it.
Yeah. Except all the experience.
Yeah.
So kind of to bring things full circle here, and we still got a little bit to talk about, but younger kid, teenager, fascinated with the military and aviation, wanting to do that.
Yeah.
Were you so when you exit customs, 6 years in the Marine Corps, doing flying aircraft, 10 years in customs flying aircraft, were you fulfilled or satisfied with your government service
Yeah.
in that sense?
Yeah. I was.
Good.
I was. I got out of the Marine Corps, kind of wondering, I just said that wasn't what I thought it was going to be like. It wasn't, but it was peacetime.
Yeah.
It was political. It was rigid where it didn't have to be because of the unit I was in. But I just left going, well, I want to do something else with the military or with the government.
Okay.
Because I want to continue this and I want to feel satisfied.
That you're talking about your transition from Marine Corps to customs.
Customs, right. Right.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to do customs.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you got to do what you wanted to do?
Yeah. I do.
Okay, good.
I do. And I got out, I think, at the perfect time for me because, well, I take that back. I got out at a good time. And everybody said, man, you got out at a good time. It just changed.
Yeah.
We didn't have anything to do anything with. And I know why you left, because you felt guilty, making all this money and you're not doing any work.
Yeah.
But 9/11 happened a little while later. And if 9/11 would have happened and I was still in, I'd have been flying Blackhawks in probably Washington, D.C. with Homeland Security doing something.
Yeah.
Doing something meaningful.
Gotcha.
And progressing and growing and doing something fulfilling.
Gotcha.
But, it was a year or so there that, I did get out and go into something else.
Gotcha. Okay.
And this is Victory Military Surplus in Monroe, 7913 Desert Street. As you walk in to the right, since I'm associated with the Chenault Military Museum, I have a lot of their things that they have given me on loan in order to display. I've got a lot of information on Sherman Field, also Delta Airlines when it was a crop duster. Since they originated here, I've got to have it here. This is Delta Airlines as it began as a passenger carrying outfit, and then Sherman Field all around, and wanting to get a lot of World War II history in here, along with some local veteran portraits here on this wall, and it's to come. Have a lot of cold weather clothing here. We're getting out of season for that. We're going to start carrying some more warmer weather gear. Here we've got automotive memorabilia. We've got some caps, sports, and also military type shooting caps, things like that. Back here we have some camping equipment, along with some military items right here, which will be the hoodies. These are fire retardant military issue hoodies. We come around to our military surplus section. Got a lot of different size camis and some military individual gear. Have flight suits and some children's camouflage. Ghillie suits. And I mentioned the Chenault Aviation Military Museum. They have a lot of books that are donated to them, and now we have an outlet to sell those for the museum. So if anybody comes in and say buys any item, 10% of their sales go to the museum. The museum helps support our local veterans in many, many different ways. Here are some prints that I've done over the years. then I started doing a Navy theme because my dad was a mechanic in the Navy. And so these three pictures here of some of the aircraft that he worked on. And this is a B-17 print that I did. And then the A-7 Corsair.
So you get done with customs and you go work for UPS.
UPS Airlines,
Yeah.
right.
So what was that transition like? And you said, I think a while ago, you said that you went after UPS, or that was what you had in mind that you wanted to do. So what was the train of thought there?
I didn't care to haul passengers. I did want to fly bigger equipment.
Okay.
And started flying initially on the DC-8, which is a 4-engine passenger jet that came around in the probably late 50s, early 60s, and then we had those at UPS, and it was a great jet to fly.
Gotcha.
Started out flying as you're not a pilot. You're sitting there monitoring all the instruments. You're a third officer.
Gotcha.
With monitoring all the fuel and all the gauges and everything. There's so much going on that it has its own panel.
Okay.
In the back. And so I did that for 2 years. Everybody had to start there. If there was a 3-place airplane, you had to start there.
Gotcha.
And then moved up into the right seat of it.
Okay. All right. So you got your 2 pilots, and then you're saying that there's a third.
Correct.
Basically an instrument. Person.
Yeah. Monitoring
everything.
All the engines and equipment.
Right. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. And so from there.
And then
I'm sorry, y'all were hauling packages?
Correct.
UPS.
Hauling packages.
So your whole UPS career, you're hauling packages.
Correct.
Okay.
And that is out of Louisville, Kentucky. That's where the home base is for UPS.
Gotcha. And did you go there just because that's where you got the job?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I moved there from Texas, moved right up there. Wife joined me and the kids joined me, and then lived there for 10 years. But after 2 years in the sitting in the third seat, I moved up into the right seat of the DC-8. It was all domestic flying for me.
Okay.
The airplane is capable of going around the world, and it did, but up to a certain point. But right before I came on, it just went to domestic flying, maybe to or to Puerto Rico or Alaska, but it was all considered domestic.
Yeah.
And just did that. And then at the end of that 4 years, I went to the MD-11, which is the model right there.
Okay, gotcha.
Moved into the right seat of it. And
so does that have 3 engines?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And flew that, and it was a around the world airplane. But I liked the domestic so much that it was week on, week off. So you got to stay home. You weren't gone 2 weeks at a time.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So if you flew around the world, you were gone 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And I didn't want to do that.
Okay.
So I just continued what I was doing on the DC-8 when they took those airplanes and went to this one. So I just continued doing mostly domestic.
Okay.
Some of it would be to Cologne, Germany, though, or Spain, or Dubai.
Yeah.
But mainly in the States.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
And
Pretty
Hawaii.
good. Pretty good money.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Real good.
Gotcha.
It was real good for what we did.
Yeah.
Great company. They really took care of you. They knew what they were doing. They knew aviation. They knew pilots. And it was just a great company, and they took care of you.
Yeah. Okay.
And I recommend anybody to fly for them.
Yeah.
The only thing I did not like was the hours.
Okay. So is that like a graveyard shift, basically flying at night?
Yeah. You're flying. You're expected to sleep during the day.
Yeah.
Which I could never do.
Me neither.
And, go to work at 9 at night.
Yeah.
And then stay gone till 7 in the morning.
Right.
And it was just so hard for me to do.
Yeah.
But I did it, but I don't know how I did it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I just did it. Just put up with it.
Gotcha. So I've got another friend who's a pilot, but he's commercial, he flies passenger. It's something that I just didn't know. You don't know if you don't work in the industry, but he has to fly from Monroe to another airport, and then maybe another airport, and then that's where he actually will pilot the aircraft, and then it's kind of like so he's getting
Yeah,
flown places to go fly places.
exactly.
Basically, did you have to do that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did. Instead of departing Louisville,
Mm-hmm.
what we would do, they would commercial fly us to
Yeah.
Philadelphia, say. And
Right.
if your flight was from Philadelphia all the way to Ontario, California, uh, you would start out at your out base. You'd start there, say Philadelphia, you'd fly to Ontario, California, and back
Okay.
in one day.
Yeah.
Or if it was too long, if it was over 8 hours, you'd stay in. Usually, it was fly one leg, fly to get in the hotel, and then next day fly back.
Gotcha.
It depends.
Yeah.
But a lot of it was shorter, to where you could just fly from, Raleigh to Louisville, and then offload and then onload and back to Raleigh, and you're done.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It just takes a long time for the transition from full plane to, empty and then fill it up again and go.
Right.
So you had 4 or 5 hours on the ground.
Gotcha. How many other pilots, guys, did you fly with at UPS?
How many?
Or, did you have any, were you able to develop friendships, or was it
yeah,
too much turnover?
Yeah, it was, when I had a friend, I had a friend.
Yeah.
But a lot of them were not.
Yeah.
And it was just a work thing.
Right.
But you were with them for that week.
Okay.
So whoever you were with for that week, you were usually with them.
I got you. For the whole week.
And for a whole week.
Okay.
And I also liked certain people, and I would bid around those certain people.
Right.
Because we had things in common.
Mm-hmm.
We worked out in the gym. We ran. We did stuff on our off time together. And I liked their personality or something. It seemed like, I don't know why, but every time I got in the airplane, it seemed like we were talking about health or Christianity or both.
Okay, nice. Yeah. Right.
And if I could do that, I usually fly with this guy more often.
Right. Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
You made some pretty good friends.
Okay.
But some guys were just,
yeah,
you didn't get to know.
Right. Good deal. So, just thinking organizationally about a company like UPS, are y'all pilots in a certain department, or is everybody just employees?
You are a good question. A real good question. The UPS was based, I don't know if this is going to answer your question. It was a ground-based operation.
Okay.
Since like 1907. So,
okay, I didn't know that.
A long time ago.
Okay.
So it's strictly ground.
Yeah.
So it is basically, their union is ground.
Okay.
And then the airplanes started coming aboard and all that. So they had to find out how they could integrate airplanes and train aviators in a ground role. But they were probably still ground union. I don't know.
Okay.
But at some point, it became like two separate entities.
Yeah.
An aviation side and a ground side.
Yeah. But
the ground side still kind of controls.
Okay.
Because there's higher ups that are in charge of the air side.
Right.
That are not pilots.
Right.
They're decision makers.
In the shipping business.
So how can they make decisions on a lot of the things that we do without being pilots?
Right.
But they did that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of an Air Force, but it did have some leadership in the ground role.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I was curious about.
Yeah.
Any prior military, also prior military pilots?
Yeah, about 50-50.
Yeah.
Most 50 military, 50 civilian.
Yeah. Gotcha. What about the did you know or have any idea of the operation as far as like loading the planes, getting the packages in the planes?
I didn't know anything about it till I got on board.
You just got in the plane and flew.
I didn't even think about the
Yeah.
sleeping habits, that you had to needed to get used to. I didn't even think about that.
Right.
But I just wanted to do the job.
Right.
Yeah, it was a good job.
Yeah.
It really was.
I think you said that the only time you got shot at was in a UPS plane.
The only time I got hit.
Yeah. The only time you got hit.
We flew into Philadelphia, and I was pre-flight in the airplane, our post flight in the airplane. And I looked up, and the maintenance guy was with me, and he goes, look at that. And that was an evident bullet hole in the back of the airplane
Yeah. Which part of the plane?
on the vertical table,
Okay.
vertical stabilizer, the
Gotcha.
tail
Yeah.
going straight
The
up.
thing that sticks out back there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
on it.
People just wanted to shoot at a plane.
Whoever you
guess.
are in Philadelphia that shot at a UPS plane so many
Brotherly
years ago,
love.
you hit them.
Find something better to do.
Yeah.
Hey, they're a good shot, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they hit a
I mean,
plane.
they hit a plane moving at how fast is a plane?
Oh, it was probably during, landing.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you're going a couple hundred miles an hour.
Yeah.
Or you're going 150 miles an hour,
Okay.
180 miles an hour.
Yeah. That's pretty good. Hit a
Yeah.
plane. Well, I did have the thought. So President Trump came to Monroe back in 2020?
No, it was like before that because he was president.
2016.
No, it was during his presidency, I
Oh,
believe.
it was during his presidency. Yeah. You remember when he came to Monroe?
Mm-mm.
Anyways, so our church, I was doing some physical training stuff with some folks, and we were on the flight path for the airport here at Monroe and Air Force One. I mean, it seemed like I could reach out and touch Air Force One. It was so low and so close and moving so slow. But then that got me thinking about the security for it. I was like, man, you could shoot Air Force One. I probably shouldn't even say that, but
Yeah.
it was that low and that close. I thought, man, I wonder what the security protocol is for
Right.
for Air Force One landing at regional airports.
Yeah.
And like somebody could have an RPG
Yeah,
and
exactly.
take a shot.
Yeah.
Anyways, it kind of blew my mind at how close and low and slow it was, but I guess nothing you
Yeah.
can do about it. Really, landing
Yeah.
a plane.
You were being watched. Don't worry.
Yeah, you were.
I kind of hope so.
You were.
I mean, I don't want to be, but I kind of hope so at the same time. Interesting. So, anything stand out during your 20 years at UPS?
No, it was real straightforward. Good company, good airplanes. Had a great job. I enjoyed it. You were Santa Claus.
Yeah.
You were
I
everybody's
love
Santa
getting
Claus.
packages.
I loved it.
I appreciate that. What you did. So you retire from UPS after 20 years.
20 years.
Yep. So 6 years in Marine Corps, 10 years U.S. Customs, 20 years UPS.
Correct.
And then you retire. So what was retiring like for you?
I wanted to stay busy.
Yeah.
I didn't want to stay idle.
Mm-hmm.
And I started before retirement. 3 years before retirement,
Okay.
I wanted to start doing something.
Gotcha.
And so I wanted to be a health coach. So I started school out of a company out of New York where you just did online training. And I did that for a little over a year, to be a health coach. And then I got through with that, and I wanted to be since the Bible is our owner's manual and tells us what we need to do,
Right.
what we should do, and how to transform, then that's what I wanted to teach. How can I teach somebody diet or improvement if it's not really what they want? If they think that dieting is the only only thing you should do to lose weight, but then what you do is from what you think. So I said, well, I need to start where the Bible says start. And transformation is by the renewing of the mind. So you got to, and before that, you need to be saved.
Right.
So, and I started thinking that, I need to start with people, but I didn't include the salvation part. I said, I can help people think differently.
Right.
And then do differently. And then I thought about it and said, in the Bible, it says you need to be saved first. So really, to be 100% effective, knowing that the Bible says that once you have the Holy Spirit, you accept God, that you can solve all your problems through Him.
Yeah.
So you have to be saved first to make sure all this is to take effect, and that you can do what you should do, what the Bible says do. So that's where I started.
Gotcha.
And so soon as I bought this building, I moved in this shop, had a gym here, had everything ready, and then COVID. And that's when I came and saw you.
Okay.
I said, I'm gonna go see Jonathan because I, he could teach me something about dealing with people. He could teach me something about physical training. But also, if someone is wanting to be improved, if someone wants to improve, then they're going to go to you. And maybe they'll continue by coming to me as a coach.
Right.
I want to work with people. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to it's not uh, consultation. It's not me being somebody that's telling somebody what to do, that what they should do. It's me working with somebody
Right.
because they're working on me. As I'm working on them, they're working on me
Gotcha.
because I need to improve too. So that's when we first met.
Mm-hmm.
And then COVID hit. And then I I didn't want to do the technical thing,
Right.
which, if I'd have been like you, you'd have been all over it. And
Um,
um, but I didn't go that route. But and then after that, I said, uh, I'll have this building. I have this what I need to do. And so I wanted to just go ahead and make it an Army surplus store because we didn't have that
Gotcha.
in the area. Um, and it would have everything in it that I would like,
Mm-hmm.
that interests me.
Right.
But I could also um, have Christian books here. I can help support our museum because I can direct people from here over to our
Mm-hmm.
aviation museum. I'm on the board at that museum now,
Right.
at the Chenault Museum, and so um, I thought it was a great fit, and I think it's a great fit. It's just new.
Yeah.
It's starting out, but I do see new people every day, and it's a great place to be. Got a lot of neat stuff, but the neatest thing about it are the people I meet.
Right.
I meet some pretty cool veterans. I meet people that have been through a lot, and I want to know their story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, you know, that's probably the most interesting thing about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I
Very.
just love the stories.
Yeah. Very. Very. Very neat. Uh. Very cool. There's another word I'm looking for. It's not coming to my mind. Valiant, I would say, in
Mm.
what you're doing as it pertains to that, and where your heart and your mind is,
Hmm.
and people.
well, I mean that.
Right.
Let's just bring that full circle to the, you know, this podcast, this ministry, Lions and Lambs.
Hmm.
We wanted you to come on because we think that you're, a pretty good embodiment of what it means to be a lion
Mm.
and a lamb. You did did the things necessary to fight evil, to fight
Right.
people who are driven by greed and self-interest, and you put your life on the line for that. And but you're also a intelligent, critical thinker and a man of faith who desires to help other people
Hmm.
through their own journey. And that's exactly what we want to do here
Yeah.
with Lions and Lambs. And so that's why we thought, and obviously you're seeing
Yeah.
that you're
Well, y'all are a perfect fit here, and I'm so glad to be a part of it. And I hope you'll want to continue doing this here at this venue. It would be
for sure.
great, um, and not for selfish reasons. I just think veterans around veterans,
Mm-hmm. Right.
and Christians around Christians,
Mm-hmm.
and we grow together.
Right.
We all need each other.
That's absolutely right.
Well, I think we alluded to the fact that we're almost, because of our access to the world, we're taken away from uh, a local body, right? A local sense of family. And I think that, being able to use your space that and I'll tell that story in a minute just to talk to who you are. But, um, you know, doing things like this is what's going to help bring that that sense of family, that local union and strength back to the places that it needs to be.
Hmm.
Right, like you said, veterans being able to get with veterans and talk and share their stories. Christians being able to get with Christians and fellowship and create relationships that are going to last and that are going to stand the test of time
Hmm.
against evil and against this world and the culture that it tries
Hmm.
to push on us. And so we're hand in hand, fighting the same fight, I would say, to make this world a better place, but also to take as many people with us out of it to heaven,
Right. Exactly.
and
That's
to
the
give them a
key.
shot at eternal life.
That is the key
Um,
right there.
On that note, what y'all are talking about there, we were in our Bible study this morning and at the church, and we read Isaiah chapter 41, and specifically verse 10. Says, "Fear not, for I am with you." And we were actually kind of talking this morning about how I think, and probably every human experiences this, but as men, I think we also we can have these moments of loneliness where we feel like we're the only one who's dealing with what we're dealing with, or in the position that we're in, or
Exactly.
and I think that a part of what you're doing and what we're doing is, and doing it together, is that we are getting together. I mean, that's, and
Right.
so I think, God is always with us. But when I'm talking to other people and I say I have these moments of sort of like desperate loneliness, when I say it out loud, it seems kind of silly because I've got a wife who's by my side that God put there. I've got children that God has blessed me with. I've got friends like yourself who I know I can swing by or call or text. And, there's no,
There's no
if
reason
I'm
for us to
feeling
feel
lonely,
alone.
it's because I'm doing it to myself,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Um, and so and so I guess maybe I want to put that out there, uh, for anybody,
Right.
really, veterans, Christians. I mean, and really just anybody, even if you're not a Christian or not a veteran and you just are feeling lonely, there's a community that you
Right.
can join, that you can be a part of, um, that can help, and
Oh,
so you
absolutely.
can
And I
get
mean,
help.
I
Mm-hmm.
expressed to some of the other guys at Bible study this morning that like I had been out for 3 weeks because me and my wife had just had a baby, so I was busy with that and just taking some time at home. But even during that time, like I noticed that my I don't know how to say it, but like I wasn't able to explore the scripture as deeply as I usually do when I have these other moments and opportunities to explore the scripture together with other men
Mm.
and with other people, you know. And I noticed the change. Like when I'm doing my own Bible study time, I'm like, man, something is missing from this, and it's the time that I would also have with other people exploring the scripture, or specifically other men, in a Bible study. And it's like, and I know that I wasn't skipping Bible study for no reason, right? Um, but it's along the same lines of like, if you feel lonely, it's probably because you're doing that yourself, and you're feeling those consequences of your own actions. That when there's something you can do about it, when there's people you can fellowship with, there's men that we all want to be alongside each other, helping each other up whenever we're down,
Mm-hmm.
and pointing each other in the right direction. Um, but those changes and nuances are noticeable, uh, if you look for them.
Yeah.
And man, I say that to say, don't kid yourself. Don't lie to yourself.
Right.
You know when something is wrong and how to fix it. It's just whether or not you want to
Actually do it.
actually do it.
Yeah. 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 And so, I mean, there's ample opportunities. You got Tim's shop here, store. You can come by and just talk to him. You
Mm-hmm.
can contact us through Facebook or Instagram. There's churches in the area, lots of good churches in our area. There's men's retreats that you can go to, which we'll be promoting some of
Right.
that kind of stuff. But um, so one last question,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it is woven through the interview here, the podcast. But can you speak specifically to how faith has played a role in your life? You guys said you got saved whenever you were 10, and so
Mm-hmm.
you've had faith for a while.
Yeah.
Were there any moments or anything that you can speak to that where faith kind of got you through,
Yeah. Yeah.
or just in
It.
a general sense, even?
Yeah. It's. I've always been a planner,
Mm-hmm.
and I plan because of my faith.
Gotcha.
And that's, I try not to put too much of my own feelings into it, my
Right.
own uh, interest. I want to see where he wants me to be.
Yeah.
And I don't know how good I've been on all of that, but I look back and I'm seeing how my uh, life has gone. It's been more professionally, but now I want to change that. I want to make it more personal. But I have planned, and things have happened, and you wonder why. You know, why all is there's other. He's got other plans
Mm-hmm.
for me.
Right.
You know, and I'm hoping that um, with the faith I have, of course, it's going to grow. I've seen what he's done for me professionally,
Mm-hmm.
with my marriage, with my kids, uh, every important aspect of my life. I see where I have let him take control of the things that were important, most important, and it's come true.
Yeah.
And now the professional side is gone. My experiences are there,
Mm-hmm.
and so he's wanting me to help. He wants me to do my job. You know, it's like my preacher said last week. He was talking about a local guy in World War II, a B-17 gunner, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and he, you know, they said, "You're a hero." Well, he'll say, "No, I was just doing my
Doing my job.
job."
Yeah.
Well, my job as a Christian to help make Christians and to teach people about Christ, that there is a Savior,
Mm-hmm.
and to uh, go through to for God, you have to go through Christ, you know,
Right.
to know God. So um, salvation is the key,
Mm.
and so I encourage people to uh, have that curiosity, to get out of the world, to know who they are, to know whose they are, set a plan, go, but knowing you're going to get off that line. But at least when you're off the line, you know where the line is. Get
Right.
back on it.
Right.
Um, and that takes people, that takes others
Mm-hmm.
to help you
Right.
do that. If you keep doing the same thing you've always done, you're going to go off of that line, and you're going to stay off that line.
Yeah.
So get back on the line.
Right.
If it takes other people, you know, that's what I'm for. That's what you're for, uh, Brennan. And that's what, as Christians, we're all to do.
Yeah.
Uh, but we're starting with ourselves.
That's right.
So that's where he's put me right now. Um, I know that veterans have a hard time telling their story.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has a story,
That's right.
and I want to hear it. And I've got a couple of books that I'm promoting that they're local authors, and I encourage the people to uh, know who they are, know their Savior, uh, but talk about what they did, what their experiences are. There's somebody out there they can help,
That's right.
but there's also someone else out there that can help them.
That's right.
And these two books are great. They're about World War II. One's about World War II and Vietnam, uh, but they journaled. The person that had experienced these experiences had tragic experiences, um, but they journaled. They wrote everything down, and they had their faith. They were Christians. They had extreme faith,
Right.
and that's what got them through what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And so, uh, my goal is to help people help themselves through knowing who their Savior is, be saved, have the faith to grow, and set a plan.
Yeah.
So
Good.
that's what I'm here for.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I just want to,
deal.
I just want to speak to how we met. Just to speak to the kind of man you are, and you know, we'd first been around each other, not really knowing each other at a Faith Bible
Mm-hmm.
Institute, which is a place for just your everyday Christian to go and to learn verse by verse about Scripture, and to really enhance their faith, and get to know their God as best as they can based upon the book that He's given us. So obviously, you're doing something that's a little bit hard to advance your faith, and then we really got to meet and know each other at a the Washita Right to Life
Mm-hmm.
meeting.
Right.
So obviously, taking political action against something that we think is evil, abortion, and then through connecting there, and getting to know each other more, we started to share our our what we aspired to do with this ministry, and you were um, open and inviting, and what's the word I'm looking for? And just about it from the start. Supportive, yeah, from the start. And I think we are obviously our biggest main goal is to bring as many people to heaven with us as possible. But I think we also have a mission to make our home and our nation as pleasing to the sight of the Lord as possible, and as righteous as possible, and to uphold justice. And I think that exactly the type of man it's going to take to make that happen, and to keep that is exactly who you are.
No.
So I
Man.
appreciate you and everything that you've done,
Well, thank
and
you.
everything that you're doing
Very nice words.
for and
Appreciate
with us. And I think that you're a great example of what it means to be a
Well,
lion.
thank
in
you
the
for the
lamb.
opportunity
Thank-
to do
thank
this,
you
to get
for-
the word out. And I hope we can continue this as long as y'all want to do it.
Absolutely.
So,
For sure.
Yeah.
what y'all are doing is tremendous. It's all about, how we're designed,
That's right.
or we, and how can we strengthen ourselves, in this life. And, if you're a little too worldly, you need to be aware of the world,
Right.
and how it can influence us. And so we have to consciously think of where we are,
yeah.
and go the direction we know we need to go.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Good deal, gentlemen.
Good.
Tim, I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you for
100%.
putting your story out there,
Yes, sir.
and fascinating. I'm still fascinated. I still have more questions that I want to ask, but we're going to leave it
We'll
as
do
it
it
is.
some more.
Yeah.
I like this.
Good deal. All right. Thank you,
All
brother.
right. Thank you very much.
Yeah.